Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we're back breaking down USC's 38-21 win over Wisconsin. It was the Trojans' first Big Ten conference win, so a little history there in the Coliseum. And Cody, I know you probably watched this game a lot, so I'm very curious your thoughts about this victory.
Yeah, it was, obviously an up and down game, and it was a story of two halves, right? And that's kind of been the storyline for this football team the last couple of weeks. But I love the leadership that we have on this team. I love that we can, turn things around and get it figured out within the game, right? We have done a phenomenal job the last 2 weeks with in-game adjustments, with halftime adjustments, with facing new opponents that we haven't played before. And that's going to happen when you go to a new conference. We don't know how Wisconsin's going to play us or Michigan's going to play us. When you play the Pac-12 over and over and over again, you understand, Arizona's game plan or Utah's game plan. When you play a new opponent in a new conference, we are learning on the fly right now what these teams are going to do with their game plan against us. And our coaching staff's done a phenomenal job of making those in-game adjustments. And our players have done a phenomenal job of picking it up on the fly and getting the job done. But I say all that as a positive. The negative side of that is these slow starts are starting to hurt us a little bit. And that cannot be the normal for this football team. We cannot consistently have a slow first half start and then turn around in the second half and think that we're going to win every football game, right? That hurt us a week ago against Michigan. We got down to we were down 11 to Wisconsin at home, and it felt like that game could really go either way in the second half until we really turned it on. But overall, again, I love the leadership of this team to be able to get that job done. I love the fight in this football team. I love what Mason Cobb said after the game. We know that the players on this team are going to keep swinging and keep throwing punches until that final whistle. And that is true. And you have to have that, especially in the Big Ten. You have to have some of those, gritty wins. And it's not always going to be pretty. And there's some tough opponents. But overall, I'm proud of the football team. I'm proud of what they did. It was fun to watch. It was a little frustrating to watch at times. And there was a lot of highs and lows in that game, on both sides of the football. I think there's a lot of things that can be better. And these preview or these post-game episodes for us now, recap episodes for me are just empty the notebooks. I take a ton of them. I watched the game multiple times now, and we'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about both sides of the football. But offensively, overall, I thought it was well. I thought Miller Moss played great. He did some things very well. I think we tried to establish a run game. It can be a little bit better there. I think it was awesome to see some of our receivers, especially these younger guys, step up and make big plays. Deuce Robinson is really starting to get some confidence. Jacoby Lane, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but if you remember who I called for the breakout player of the year from our preseason episodes, I really thought that Jacoby Lane was going to be that guy. And when you watch some of these plays on Saturday, you really see flashes of how good he can be,
Yeah.
right? He has the potential, and I don't want to put him in that category yet, put that much pressure on him, but he has the potential to be one of the great ones. And he can absolutely do that. And Deuce Robinson's right behind him.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun to see. So offensively in those areas, we're great. Now, my biggest concern, not only on offense, but probably this entire team right now. And again, we'll break it down in a couple minutes, but the offensive line, we have to get that fixed, right? The run game struggled a little bit. We have running backs that can make us right, though. We have good players in the backfield that can figure that out, but protection, when it comes to pass protection, especially right now, trying to figure out who that starting five is going to be, we have to be better in our one-on-one blocks, and we have to be better in communication because we cannot keep letting Miller take these hits, right? And some of those are on him. There's times he could have thrown the football away. There's times it was an RPO and he knows that there's a free rusher and he's going to take that hit and still try to deliver the football. But overall, there's too many times on film, especially when you watch it back, where there's a communication issue and it's a free rusher, or we are just losing a one-on-one block and Miller is taking a hit. Now, only one sack on the day. Love that. But there are too many pressures and there's too many hits, especially after he gets rid of the football. So we got to get those things fixed. Defensive side of the ball, I thought we played phenomenal, right? And some of you may raise your eyebrows at that and think, okay, well, there was, some things that we needed to fix. There were some big time plays, sure. But when you really, again, watch the tape and you break it down and look at the numbers and you look at the drives that Wisconsin had, this was a phenomenal, dominant performance by this defense. And I'll break that down again when we get to the defensive portion of this show. But yeah, overall, I love the fight that this team has. I thought we played great. I really feel like this game came down to a couple of plays, right? And this is 2 weeks in a row now. The Michigan game, it didn't go our way, but this week it did. And if you think back to the game yesterday, if you were in the Coliseum, I'm sure you felt it there and the energy in the stadium, or probably watching from home, you could feel it as well. But after the second half, or when we came out of that second half, right, we hold Wisconsin to a 3-and-out. Great. Love that. We get the ball back thinking this is our chance to spark this offense, to spark this stadium, to get the crowd back involved, to get momentum back on our side, and we don't get the job done. We have to punt it. So going from there, it really felt like if we don't get a stop and Wisconsin goes down and scores and we go down 28-10, where do we go from here? Is the game over? Can we come back from that? A little bit of luck there, and we'll take it. We've been on the wrong side of this time before, and even in this game. But they had a muff punt. we get the ball back, and you could feel kind of that instant spark in the Coliseum. Everyone's
Yeah.
excited again.
Yeah.
We have great field position, which we were struggling to get throughout this football game, really the last 2 weeks. But, and I remember looking over at my brother, watching it live, saying, these are the plays in football games that you need sometimes that can make or break a game, that really change the momentum and then ultimately change the outcome. And it happened for us this game. So that was great to see. And we still had to go down and score, and we capitalized on that. But then the following drive, this was all us. Dude, this wasn't luck. We did a great job. Wisconsin was putting together a good drive. They're up 21-17. Still, they could go down and score, make it 28-17, and we're back in a hole. But we make a phenomenal fourth down stop. Kamari Ramsey played great. That was a huge play. Now, Anthony Lucas shed a blocker, made a play in the backfield against Wisconsin. Very good running backs. They did a good job of running downhill, and they like to establish the run. And they had some big-time plays, but I really felt like on defense we weathered the storm and figured it out and had a great performance, throughout the entire game, but really the second half. So, yeah, it was an up and down game, and like I said, it's never as good as you think. It's never as bad as you think, but we really need to start putting together dominant performances on both sides of the football from the first half all the way to the second half. We can't be a team that's the story of two halves the entire year, especially with how tough the schedule is going to get going throughout the Big Ten the rest of the season.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm excited to dive into it with you, Cody. Before we do, just a couple reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box, either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are Victory Pod USC. And if you're listening to the audio version, you can also send us a text in the description of the podcast. It says, send us a text, and you can click on that. It'll open your messaging app, and that's where you can text us. So we can also hear from you that way. So many avenues to get your voice heard. And of course, we have a ton of questions this week, Cody. Probably not surprising to you at all.
Did you hear that bark?
No, I did not.
Okay, come here. Come here.
Oh, we're going to get early Coda
Normally
appearance.
At the end of the show. Come on. He knows now. He's trained when we do the podcast that he knows. How do you think the game went? Okay, he's good. All right, we got our Coda intro done early.
Love it. It's a good omen for the show, Cody.
Yeah, he is. He's really our third member on the at home podcast
for sure
now. So he gets a little jealous if he doesn't get to be on there.
I love it. Alrighty, let's start with the offense, Cody. I know, especially given what we saw against Michigan, you highlighted in our preview episode for Wisconsin, USC needed to start fast on offense. And it's interesting because we talk about the tale of two halves, but they did start fast, at least for that first drive. And I have an interesting fun fact. I'm going to make it a trivia question, actually. USC scored a touchdown on its first drive on Saturday, which was the first time that happened since when, Cody?
Oh, really?
Sorry, I know I just threw that at you, but I thought it was interesting.
No, I like it. I'm a football nerd. I love the trivia. I could do a whole episode of football trivia questions.
Right.
And off topic here, but kind of on topic. I'm 2-0 right now in our Trojan tailgate trivia contest.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought you were going to bring up
score
prediction.
Score predictions
Yeah.
Which I was pretty close on that too. I'm going to take a win there. But okay,
Whatever.
So back to the original trivia.
The first time USC scored a touchdown
hint?
On its first drive of the game. What's your hint?
Is it under the Lincoln Riley era?
Yes.
It has to be.
Yes.
Okay, it has to be. I don't know. That was a bad question. I'm going to go. I'm trying to really think back. I'm going to go Holiday Bowl. We didn't score. I'm trying to go back to last year.
Oh, you're like really trying to do this. Just guess.
I know. Well, I'm also trying to give our fans. Okay, I'm going to go. Let's go. I'm trying to think of who we played at the end of the year last year. Oregon. No, we didn't score in the Oregon game, I don't think.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, just tell me.
No, what were you going to say? You got to guess.
No, I know. Well, I'm trying to think back to our schedule from last year towards the end of the year.
Just guess. Perfectionist Cody, go for it.
Okay, let's go. UCLA game last year.
Washington last year.
Washington. So that was, and what week? Do you remember what week that was? That was like
it was November. That's all I remember.
Man. Yeah, okay, so
Isn't
that's
that wild,
big.
though? I wouldn't have thought that, though.
I really knew that. I was just stalling for time, so our
sure you were, Cody. How kind of you, for sure.
I was being a team player. That's crazy, though. I mean, but and kind of following off of that, because I feel like I know where you're going with that, was great to see because we did start fast, right? We that first touchdown, and that was beautiful. We talk about this off air sometimes too, or our preview episodes of, and then obviously it gets talked about on the show, but I'm like, let's throw the football. Let's start throwing the football. I know you want to establish the run and get the offensive line going, and we have to be able to protect and do that. But I love that we came out and hit Jacoby Lane for a 15-yarder to start the game. Then we got a couple run plays going, got some rhythm, and we'll take a 15-yarder to start the game as well on the opening kickoff. When Tackett Curtis came down, he got a face mask penalty, which was, that's the opposite of starting backed up from a week ago. We started within our own 5 or our own 10.
Yeah.
This week we got a 15-yarder on them, and now we get that boost. So that obviously helped and got us some momentum going forward. But when I see a team come out throwing the football first or allowing their quarterback to get into a rhythm, that's when I'm an opposing defense, or I'm a defensive staff or defensive coach. I think, all right, these guys are going to try to run us out of the stadium. They're coming out firing. They're not going to slowly get into the game plan. They're not going to slowly fill us out on defense, what we're going to do. They're coming out firing, and they're going to tell us to try to keep up. And that's exactly what we did. That was a beautiful, beautiful pass by Miller Moss. I've watched it now 5 times, even counting the replays on the TV copy when they showed them themselves. Then I rewound it. I don't know how that ball got in there. I also don't know how Jacoby Lane made that catch and still got a foot in or a toe in, barely in. And that safety was a second away. And it just shows you, though, how small the margin for error is in football, right? If that throws a half second later, then it's an interception or the safety makes a play on it. If it's a half inch outside, then he doesn't get his foot in. So that was a phenomenal start. And then we slowed down a little bit. But, hey, since the Washington game, a little frustrating, but hopefully that can be a spark going forward to now that's the normal for this football team to go out there and score on that opening drive.
Now, looking at Miller's day as a whole, he was 30 of 45 for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was his second 300-yard passing game this season and third of his career. What did you make of his performance overall?
Yeah, I thought he played well. And there were some throws that he'd like to have back, and he tried to force a couple and maybe some reads that he'd like to have back. But again, he's still young. Well, he's a redshirt junior, but he's young when it comes to experience-wise as a starting quarterback. But I'll tell you right now, one thing that you can't question about the kid, and it makes me so proud to be a Trojan and be a former quarterback and watch him, is his toughness. I mean, he's taking hit after hit. He's putting his body on the line, that rushing touchdown, right, where he went airborne. And it's tough because I want to tell him to slide, but when you're also, he already got the first down when it was 4th and short.
Yeah.
So you want to tell him to slide to protect himself. But also, I get it when you're within a yard of the end zone. Like, I'm doing everything I can. I'm laying my body on the line to go out there and score. And I'll tell you what, though, when you have situations like that, and I was guilty of it, I had multiple times where coaches said, hey, slide, get down. But there's a little bit of a pride thing when it comes to, I'm going to try to run somebody over. Now, I may not do it, but I'm going to go out there and lower my shoulder a couple times and show that, or I might lay out for a pylon or try to dive for an end zone and show these guys around me the belief that they have in me and that they know that I'm a leader and I'm willing to do anything for them. You can do, there's so much you can do when it comes to stats wise, right? Defensive guys, the guys around them love watching them throw touchdowns and, our quarterback's got a great arm, all that. But when it comes to the character aspect of things, when it comes to, I'm the quarterback who's, normally the golden boy and, let's not touch our quarterback. Let's protect him. And he's out there lowering his shoulder and taking those hits and hopping back up. And, you see him shrug his shoulders a little bit and having some pride and a little, not cocky, but confidence or flirting the line of it. It instills a confidence from the football team that is very difficult to do when you've only had 4 or 5 starts in your career, right? When you're this young as a starter or this young in your career as a starter, and you can get guys around you believing in you and trusting you, not only because of how well you're playing, but the toughness and the grit that you're showing, that's when you have something special, right? And that's when you really start to get everybody to buy in. And I was always told this as a quarterback, and I truly, truly believe this. When you get the offense to buy in and believe in you as a starter, that's great. But when you get the entire team and the defense to fully look at you as a leader and to buy into you as a starter and know, hey, we're going to go out there and put our body on the line and get a stop because we know Miller's going to go down there and dominate. That's when you have something good as a quarterback, right? And Miller's starting to do that, and I truly believe that. Now, looking at the stats on his day, I thought he played well, right? Was very efficient, 30 of 45. I love how he protected the football. Did throw 1 interception, but outside of that, and that's a throw that I truly believe he can make. He made it a little bit later to Deuce Robinson, kind of a back shoulder inside fade throw, right? You just got to put that a little bit more outside for Zachariah, and he'll make that play for you. But outside of that, he really didn't put the football in harm's way too much. He was very smart with it. He did a good job. The sack fumble's tough to put on him because it's kind of a blindside hit. Didn't see it coming. But overall, I was very proud of how he performed. I think he continues to get better. And again, I know there was a little frustration in the first half with this offense, but he was moving the football, making great throws, making great decisions, stepping up in the pocket, going through progression. It was just a couple turnovers here and there that made the first half look worse than it really was. But I mean, I'm not going to give him an A+, and I know he wouldn't either. I know Lincoln wouldn't either, but I thought he played solid and a very good performance, just like he did a week ago to go out and win a football game. Did everything he could and put his body on the line, had 4 touchdowns on the day. So I'm proud of him. I think he's going to keep getting better, and it's really good to get tested this early on in Big Ten conference play because the opponents are going to keep getting tougher.
Now, the other side of the coin, though, when talking about Miller's toughness is that what's kind of bringing on that toughness is the offensive line, maybe not getting it done when they need to. What did you make about their play on Saturday?
Yeah, this is an area for this football team that I'm very concerned about, right? And this is my biggest concern on this football team. And I've said it before and I'll say it a million times. I truly believe on offense, we are only going to go as far as this offensive line will take us, especially in the Big Ten. You have to be able to control the trenches on both sides of the football. Defensive line is doing a good job, right? They're playing well up front on the defensive line. Offensive line, we have to get better, right? And we also have to find out who that starting five is going to be. Because in this football game, and this is a question we got a lot in the preview episode. Is starting five going to be the first half of Michigan, or is it going to be the second half of Michigan when we saw Tobias Raymond come in and Mason Murphy move over to left tackle? But to answer that question, we started this football game out with Elijah Page back at left tackle. Mason Murphy moved back to right tackle, but we did have a change on the interior of this offensive line. We had Amos Talalele starting at right guard, and then Emmanuel Pregnon at left guard, and Jonah Monheim at center. That was a starting five. Now we rotated at right guard a good amount throughout the game. I think that's something that needs to be addressed and be fixed. It's so tough as a starting five to build continuity, to build consistency, to be comfortable as a quarterback and who your starting five is if you consistently rotate, right? And I know that Lincoln and Coach Henson are really waiting for someone to take over that right guard spot, to step up and say, this is my job. Because in this football game, it wasn't like it just stuck with Talalele or it stuck with Alani Noah. It was rotating throughout the entire game. So obviously, there wasn't a guy that kind of separated himself above the rest, or they told them pregame, we're going to let you guys rotate. And then going into next week, maybe we're going to solidify a starter. But overall, priority one right now is figure out who that five is. And it needs to be consistent. And they need to play well together and they need to build that chemistry together because it's only going to get tougher, right? I know Michigan was tough, but Penn State has a very good defensive line. Nebraska has been playing very well with their front seven, right? Notre Dame has a very good front seven. So we have to get better there, right? So that's the first part for me is figure out who that five is. The second part of it, and this comes into I don't care who it is. I don't care who's in there. We are messing up on things that I feel like are day one install issues, that are day one of spring ball issues, right? One of the things I talked about, going back to my notes, going back to my prep, watching Wisconsin, was I said, look, they don't bring a lot of pressures outside of a four or five man blitz. That's about it. Their rush is only going to be four or five guys. There were multiple times that it was just a four-man rush and they were doing twists and stunts that I talked about in the preview episode of. Be ready for that. Study that. Practice that throughout the week. I'm sure we did. But on Saturday, there were multiple times where it was just a tackle and a defensive end stunning, just a twist, simple twist on both sides. And we had two guys blocking one. We had our guard working out, and there's no one blocking on the inside. We had three rushers getting tee shots on Miller Moss because we couldn't figure out how to communicate or handle those twists. They weren't even bringing blitzes like we saw against Michigan. They weren't bringing extra rushers. There were four-man pressures with a simple twist stunt, with a tackle and an end, twisting like I talked about. We saw on film, and I know they watched the same film that we did, that we had to be able to fix or we had to be able to handle on Saturday. There were too many times on tape that we didn't get that done. That was an issue. That to me is a communication problem, right? When you have a free rusher like that, when you have two guys that are working together as a guard and tackle on offense, saying, hey, be ready for the twist, pass. And they say, pass, 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 or move, 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 or switch, switch, switch. Whatever their call is, they have to be ready for that. If there's a guy going out, there's someone coming back in every single time. We missed that too many times. Free hits on Miller. Another thing that we are struggling with right now is one-on-one pass protection, right? We have to be better at our one-on-one blocks and specifically at left tackle. That is Miller Moss's blind side. That sack fumble on that drive that we had getting into Wisconsin territory, going down, getting ready to score, was on our left tackle. Elijah Page struggled to get out to the widest defender, get the block on. He got a late start on a blitzing backer. And again, that was something that happened against Michigan, getting laid off to the football. I'm not saying that he doesn't have the capability of doing it. He has the size. There are times that he dominates at the left tackle position where he stonewalls the defender, where he throws him out of the club. You know, they engage and he's kicking him out 4 yards out of the tackle box and allowing Miller to step up. But it's not good enough to just win some of them, especially at a tackle position when you're on an edge by yourself. Now, we did a good job of having Woody Marks or Quentin Joyner when they didn't have pass protection responsibility of chipping the defensive end and helping them on the way out on both sides, right? And there's times that Mason Murphy can be better in pass protection, right? But on the left side of our offensive line right now at left tackle, and mainly I say this because that's Miller Moss's blind side, we have to be better. It's not good enough to win 75%, right? It's not good enough to win 50%. You have to win every time. And you're going to get beat sometimes. There's going to be, and you hope you don't, but there's going to be situations where you play a great defensive end and you may lose one or two throughout the entire game. But there's too many times on tape And like I said, all over the field, there's times it happens on the interior. Jonah Monheim lost some one-on-one blocks on the inside this game, right? No one's perfect up front. But when you're on the edge and you're on an island, and it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's easy to do. I've never had to do it. It is so difficult as a tackle at any side to be one-on-one on an island against a very good physical pass rusher that gets to start off with a sprinter stance and take off, and you've got to backpedal and kick back and stonewall them and block them and keep them from your quarterback. It's not easy, but you have to be able to get the job done, because if you don't, your quarterback pays for it. Your offense pays for it. We can't get into a rhythm. We want to start fast. We want to push the football down the field. We want to be efficient. We want Miller Moss to keep having 300-yard passing games and throw for 3 touchdowns. We have to be able to let routes develop in the back end. And to be able to do that, Miller Moss needs time in the pocket, right? And the biggest thing for me, I just can't. It pains me to watch him take these hits. And there's things that he can do to protect himself, right? The targeting call. It wasn't a targeting, but they reviewed it. The one where he threw it, I think, to Deuce Robinson, and he took that hit and his head kind of went to the side. That's on Miller, right? When you watch it, you may think, oh, the offensive line's getting him killed. But that one was on Miller. That was an RPO where you had a go route on the outside or a fade route to Deuce that you can throw, but Miller knew he had that backside defensive end as his responsibility. He had to pull it. So there are things that happen in this football game and that happened against Michigan that are on Miller. And he'll be the first one to tell you that. He can throw it away at times. He knows when there's an unblocked defender. He knows when it's a cover 0 blitz, and he stays in there and takes a hit, and he knows that we only have 5 to block 6. Those are things that are on Miller. But overall, when they just bring a 4-man rush and we lose against a stunt that we watched on film that I said on our preview podcast, they're going to stunt. They're going to twist. They're going to play games up front, communicate, be ready for them. And we constantly, not constantly, but more than one's enough for me, but we consistently lost in some of those pass protection or those twist stunts that got Miller Moss hit. That can't happen. The other issue, like I said, when it's a straight up 4-man rush or a 5-man rush and everybody's one-on-one, especially on the edges, we have to be able to win those pass protections in one-on-one, or it's going to be a long season and this offense is going to stall out at some point. And I don't know how many more hits Miller can continue to take if we don't get it fixed. And it may sound like I've talked a lot about this topic more than I have other things, but in my opinion, this is the most concerning area of our football team right now, is A, figuring out who that 5 is going to be and get chemistry up there. But B, when we solidify that 5, we need to be able to be great in pass protection so that we can be efficient on offense.
Well, you hit on a hot topic in our question section. A lot of people wanted to know about the offensive line in general. What is the issue there? How do you fix it? And I know that's something that I asked you last episode. We're almost at midseason right now. What can you do in this part of the season to actually help that area?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough too. The difficult part from the outside looking in is, and coaches are always going to be the first ones to say that about we've got to put guys in better position to win, right? That's always the coach's answer, right? That's the best way to say it, not only here but everywhere. That's what, and the good coaches will take the blame and take responsibility. They're never going to throw a player under the bus, but there are times as a coach and or as a player or as a unit that you need to not call guys out, but make it a little personal. Force them to take some accountability. Force them to have their name called out or feel that sense of urgency to get it fixed, right? And I'm not saying you want to do that as a coach, but there's other guys within that meeting room, the leaders, the Jonah Monheims on the team, to stand up behind closed doors. And I'm not saying go out there and bash your teammates in the media, but stand up behind closed doors and there's only so much a coach can do, right? And as a player, as a leader in that room, when you're Jonah Monheim, when you're Emmanuel Pregnon, who I think are both playing very good football right now, I got to give them credit because there are guys that are playing great up front. It's not the entire unit. I think Emmanuel Pregnon is playing very high level football right now. He's been a lot of fun to watch when I break down film. Jonah Monheim, he's playing a new position. He's going to lose some of those at D tackle or going against some of these D tackles in this conference, but he is doing a great job. And I'm proud of the way that he's playing. Right guard, obviously getting figured out. I think Mason Murphy's playing well. Left tackle Elijah Page has had some ups and downs. So it's not all bad. I don't want it to sound like I'm here bashing the offensive line and saying it's all on them. I also put accountability on Miller, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. And Lincoln will too. And there are times as a coaching staff that you can put players in better position. I think we did that this game, though, allowing running backs and tight ends to stay in pass protection and help. And you protect your guys that way. You protect some of the areas that you're struggling with, which is on the edges right now in pass protection. But overall, when it comes down to being prideful of winning in that scenario of winning in pass block or pass protection and taking pride in your position group room, you have to have guys behind closed doors stand up and challenge you internally. That's the way that I've gotten better. That's the way that the good teams I've been on are when the coaches leave and you say, hey, player only meeting, get in here, right? Henson can tell us to do so much. Lincoln Riley can put us in so many good positions. We have to figure it out ourselves, though. At some point, it has to go from I will get it done, coach, or telling you I'm going to get it done to getting it done, to getting it fixed. That is a want to. That is a will. That is because we have guys that can do it. We've seen Elijah Page play high level football, whether it's a confidence issue right now or he's just struggling adapting to the Big Ten a little bit, or guys up front as well. There's other guys, like I said, that are struggling in pass protection. And it just feels like there's too many times on tape that we just aren't playing well as a unit, as all five. And again, you're rotating all five, so it's tough to figure out who that group's going to be. But we have to get this fixed and get it fixed fast because, like I mentioned before, if we don't, our offense is going to have to change, right? Your play calling is going to have to change. We're not going to be able to get to the aggressive play style consistently that we want to be at because, like I mentioned, Miller can't keep taking those hits. We can't have routes that need 4 or 5 seconds to develop and expect our offensive line to hold up every time if we're not putting good stuff on tape right now. If we're losing easy one-on-one blocks, not easy, it's never easy, but losing straight up one-on-one blocks over and over, losing tackle and or defensive tackle and twist games that we can communicate and pass off and that should be figured out at least after the first two times and not happen a handful of times in a football game. If we can't get that done, it's going to force our offense to have to change and adapt a little bit and play not down to, but play in a way to protect our offensive line. And it's going to be a lot more quick game and getting the ball out faster and not allowing some of our big time playmakers to go down the field. Right. So it's frustrating. I could go on and on about this for hours. I've been on teams that, we've struggled and as a quarterback, you take responsibility as well. But I've been on teams where we've struggled, not necessarily not having a good offensive line, but figuring out the consistency issues. I've been on teams where we've rotated guys. I've been on teams that had a ton of injuries up front and offensive line, right? I think sophomore year, we went through 4 or 5 centers when we had guys keep getting hurt, right? And we were down to, I think, our third or fourth string center by the time we got to the bowl game. So there's a lot of things that happen throughout a year with an offensive line that is either in your control or out of your control. But overall, you have to get it fixed. I don't care what the excuse is. I don't care if it's a backup, third string, you rotate guys, you try to figure out who's going to be in there. Whenever you set that solid five in there, you've got to come together behind closed doors as a unit, take it personal, and get the job done.
We got a question from Trojan Sam who said the young guys currently rotating at right guard have been having their struggles. Do you think it would be beneficial to add another veteran like Gino Quinones into the starting lineup, or is he still not fully healthy? And I don't think we have the true answer to that from our perspective.
Yeah.
I would wager to say he's not fully healthy, but curious your thoughts there, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, and Coach Riley said this throughout the year is just he's not quite there health wise yet, and he's tried to get into that rotation at right guard. But in my opinion, I would love to see Gino out there, especially if we keep rotating guys or we don't, if no one really solidifies that spot at right guard. I would love to see him out there, but you also don't want to rush, right? And you don't want to put him in a position to where if he's not ready yet, he's actually going to hurt the team more than he is going to benefit the team. And sometimes you put guys out before they're ready and they re-aggravate an injury, or they're out there and they're not 100% yet, especially at a position like right guard, where it's one of the most physical spots on the entire field, and they're doing it at 75 or 80%, and they're starting to lose some of those one-on-ones, and then they lose confidence, right? So I think that, like Keely said, is he has the experience, right? He's a veteran player in there. He's played a good amount of football. I think when the time is right, and Lincoln, and again, this is a Coach Riley question that I'm sure he'll address and will probably come up this week as they continue to talk about that position or at some point. But when it comes to, and I've been on teams where guys sometimes try to get out there faster than they should be, and then they re-injure themselves, or they lose a little bit of confidence because they're not winning in some of these reps because they're not quite to the player that they are before. So would love to have Gino out there, but yeah, Coach Riley knows best when to get him back out there and when he's going to be ready. But I think we will see Gino at some point this year. I hope that we do, but just that'll happen whenever the time's right.
Were you surprised that most of the rotation on Saturday came at right guard rather than other positions based on what we saw at Michigan as well?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I said it on the podcast last week. I thought that we were going to go out there and again, we don't see what happens at practice. I'm sure it was an open competition, and Coach Riley did allude to Elijah Page having cramping issues and having some issues that were outside of his control in that football game against Michigan. But yeah, I was surprised at right guard. I know we have rotated a little bit there throughout the year, but it's really been Alani Noah's job for the most part at right guard. So that surprised me, especially to see Talalele out there to start the football game. I was not ready to see that. But again, it's always a competition at USC. You're always competing to be the best player on the field. Now, at the tackle position, when we rotated in the second half, and because of the spark that we had in the second half and how well we played, especially in that opening drive to start the third quarter, where we went 12 plays, 75 yards, and a touchdown, and 10 of those 12 were through the air, and we did a great job in pass protection. I thought that we were going to see that second half offensive line where Mason Murphy moves to left tackle and Tobias Raymond comes in at right tackle. Now, was Tobias perfect? No. Did he do some things very well as a freshman in that environment without probably a ton of reps with the ones throughout the week? Absolutely. I thought he showed some great promise and had some great wins against Michigan, but so did Elijah Page, right? But that's why offensive line, it's so difficult to just win. Even if you win, say you win 8 out of 10 reps, for 2 quarters, right? You have 10 plays in the first quarter and you have 10 plays in the second quarter. You win 8 out of 10 in both quarters. That's still 4 times that your quarterback is getting hit. And it may not seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but when those hits add up and now that 4.5 turns into 8 for an entire game, it becomes a problem. But for anyone else, hey, I had an 80% win rate. That sounds great. But when it leads to your quarterback taking those hits, that's when the margin for error gets so small that you can't have those issues, right?
Yeah.
At tackle.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I think it looks a lot worse. And it's a tough spot. I hate to make it sound like I'm putting the blame on someone or saying, hey, anybody can do that job, because if they could, everyone would try. But you can't. It is a difficult spot. And we play in one of the best conferences for defensive lines or front seven or edge rushers in the entire country. And it is a challenge week in and week out, whether you're playing the top half teams of the Big Ten or the bottom half teams. There are good football players throughout this entire conference. And I think this conference is a lot better from top to bottom than a lot of people thought it was going to be going into this year. But yeah, I mean, the right guard rotation surprised me a little bit. I thought maybe we would see some more rotation at tackle throughout the game as well. But I think Coach Riley is kind of with me on this one, but with us a little bit, I guess, in a way of, we need to find out who this 5 is, right? And I've seen a lot of good stuff on tape from Elijah Page. I've seen a lot of good stuff on tape from Mason Murphy at right tackle. I'm comfortable there. Let's let them keep battling through this and figure out if they can be the solidified starters at tackle. But maybe right guard this week was a spot that they had concern at practice or going throughout the week, or stuff that they saw in film that maybe we didn't see, watching the game back, of, hey, we need to figure out at right guard, we could be a little bit better. That can help us out at tackle. That maybe that was some of the issues that they were trying to make up for, some issues that were happening elsewhere, and trying to do someone else's job, to where we need to figure it out. So there's so many little things that could go on throughout the week in practice or in the film study after a game that can lead to decisions like rotating position groups or rotating positions in the following week. But yeah, it was a little surprising. Now, going back to the tackle spot, I think this week at practice, it was an open competition. I fully believe that. And Elijah Page stepped up and earned the spot again. Now, are there things that he can do better? And he struggled a little bit against Wisconsin. Yeah, absolutely. Am I saying that Tobias Raymond's the perfect answer and moving Mason Murphy back to left tackle is going to fix everything? No, because that would have probably been done if Lincoln Riley felt that way. So it's a tough job to be in. It's a tough spot to be in when you don't have a solid 5. And like I said, I've been on teams like that before. But again, no matter what the excuse is, we can't have that on Saturdays be the thing of, oh, hey, we're still trying to figure it out, and we're at week 8 now or week 9, and we're playing hopefully potentially to be in a conference championship or on the border of being a playoff team, and we still haven't figured that position group out, because it will get exposed as we go throughout this year. So it's got to be, like I said, again, it's got to take Jonah Monheim to stand up in a players-only meeting, to get all the coaches out and look at each other and say, hey, we've got to figure this out. We've got to take pride in ourselves and one another and get this figured out, because if we don't, we're going to keep getting number 7 back there hit, and that's our responsibility to keep him safe. And I'm trying to stop here because I don't want to keep going, but another thing on that, and a little thing I got frustrated with, and I'm not trying to call guys out again, but there are too many times in that football game, go back and watch the tape, where Miller Moss is taking hits and he's getting up by himself. And I'm calling the offensive line out a little bit on this, and because I played with some great ones that helped me out. If you're responsible for your quarterback, thumbs up, there we go. If you're responsible for your quarterback getting hit, go over there and help him up, please. Do not let him pick himself up off the floor. Even if it wasn't your responsibility, if you're an offensive lineman and your quarterback's getting hit, go over there and help him up, right? And I'm sure that'll be addressed. I'm sure the guys in the film room know that and they see that. But there's too many times Miller is standing in there taking hit after hit, and he's having to help himself up back off the Coliseum turf. We need our offensive lineman to run over there, help him up, dust him off, and get him back ready to go. But I know there's a sense of pride in that group, so I'm not worried about it. I'm concerned, but I'm not going to let that worry linger. I'm sure that we'll get it figured out, and I have confidence that this coaching staff and this group up front will take it personal and not let this be an issue that's going to happen for the entire year.
Also, just to explain a little moment we had there in your answer for our audio listeners, Cody's computer has the reactions on, and Cody's version of finger pointing is like thumbs up motion, and his computer receives it as a thumbs up. Let's put a reaction bubble by your head, which in the middle of a rant is just an interesting juxtaposition. So just wanted to clear that up. Yeah, there you go.
I'm doing it again. You can't see it, but yeah, I do a thumbs up in a bubble. It's a setting on my computer that Keely said she can help me fix, but I'm at the point now where I don't even care anymore. I think it adds a little bit of a little pizzazz to my side. look, when you do two thumbs up, I know you guys can't see it, but it gives you fireworks. So I needed a little bit of that comedic relief if you couldn't tell there too, because I was getting a little fired up. But I mean, and I'll say this: I'm not telling you anything that I promise you is not going on in that position meeting already, right? There's not they're already in there talking about getting it fixed. And I've been in those quarterback and offensive line meetings, right? You always meet with the offensive line and the quarterbacks individually, normally on Fridays or Thursdays before a game to go over protection notes a final time, or you stay after and have those quarterback offensive line meetings together. And I'm not saying that some of these issues aren't on Miller Moss, right? And Miller will be the first one to be accountable to say, hey, I can throw that football away and help you guys out a little bit. I can protect myself a little bit better when I know there's a free rusher. Maybe he's making some protection calls that he could be better at, right? So there's so many other aspects to it. The biggest thing I'm talking about is that frustrates me a little bit, and I know that they're being accountable for is when we've talked about the twist stunts or the games that they're going to play up front when you have a Wisconsin team that's going to twist those guys, and you've seen it on film all week. To miss those multiple times in a game, that's unacceptable. To miss a one-on-one block consistently, or even lose 2 out of 3, or even lose a couple throughout the game that get your quarterback hit, that can't happen, right? You have to be able to win those one-on-one blocks to be successful on offense. Your offensive line is going to carry your team on the offensive side of the football. You can't run the ball and you can't throw the ball if your offensive line isn't doing their job, right? So I think that's why it's so important. But again, I may seem like I'm being a little critical or I'm being a little harsh right now, but I promise you, these are the talks that they're having. Probably a little bit worse than this, or a little bit more fired up than I am right now doing the podcast. But these are the talks that they're having inside those position groups, or at least the leaders are getting up and having those conversations. And again, I truly believe Jonah Monheim is in there on Sundays after games or on Mondays after you watch the film saying, guys, we've got to get this figured out. There's only so many things the coaches can do to put us in right positions or put us in the right spots for us to be successful. It's on us now, and we've got to take accountability for that. But I truly, truly believe we have the staff and we have the players to get it fixed and get the job done and get some more consistency in that group going forward.
Trudy, Louis, and Rama all wanted to know how to fix this schematically. Louis said, would getting Miller under center help to balance out the rushing attack? And Rama said, would putting 2 tight ends on passing downs help Miller?
Yeah, so there's multiple things you can do, and we did that, and it was in my notes. I watched it multiple times. One thing you can do is it's called a chip block, right? Chip. It's like, and one of our signals would be like eating a chip before when we did this. I think back with Sark, but it's called a chip block. So you would have at Keely like that one. I could hear you laughing in the background, but
I did.
so we would have a running back go out, and say as an offensive line, your responsibility is a 4-down lineman, and they have the will linebacker, which is the weak side linebacker. The running back now has the Mike linebacker, which is the middle, and the Sam linebacker, which is the strong side backer. If the Mike or the Sam don't come and the running back has no responsibility and protection, your job is to now chip on your way out, which means he's going to help out whatever side he's on that tackle by getting a shoulder or a chip block to slow down that defensive end. That helps out your tackles. That's one way. It's also a chip block if you have a tight end, your Y, which is the tight end position on the field. And he's in pass protection, right? Normally, he's not going to have responsibility in pass protection, so it'll just be a delayed route for him, a delay flat, right? It'll be Y chip, delay flat. That means that we're going to drop back before you get out. You're going to help with that defensive end. If I'm on the left side, I'm helping Elijah Page out with a shoulder block, with a quick chip block to slow down that defensive end. Then I'll get to my delayed flat route, right? And then I'm an outlet for the quarterback. So those are ways that you can fix it. I'm fine with going 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, right? That's 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers. But that hurts you a little bit in the pass game because now if you keep both tight ends in, you lose receivers in the pass game. You only have 2 options. You can only go to the Z or the X, which are the outside guys, and then maybe you're back getting out in the backfield for a check down. So that's the part that hurts us a little bit, and that's not really what we do on offense. That's not our MO, and that's not how we are successful in the pass game under Lincoln Riley. This week, we even went 4 wides a lot, right? And I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but with the Y, we talked about Kyle Ford and Deuce Robinson coming out and playing tight end, right? So I say that to say we do the opposite of going 12 personnel, especially with Lake McCree out, right? And I know Cade Eldridge came in and Walker Lyons played well, had some big time plays in this game. But yeah, there's different things that you can do in pass protection to help out, but you're going to be hurt elsewhere. You're going to be short elsewhere, right? If you bring in extra protection up front, you're going to be short in the pass game with receivers. If you keep the running back in for a chip block or you have to help out a little bit, you're going to be late getting out for your check down. So there's always a push-pull with some of that stuff. But the best case scenario, like I said, and I think we can get there, but to have 5 guys up front that are consistent, that can win their one-on-one blocks. Bring 5 guys. I don't care. We're going to block all of them. We're going to win all 5 one-on-ones up front, but we just aren't there yet. But we have to get there if we want this offense to be able to be dominant and start fast and play fast like we want to see.
Well, it's a perfect segue into another question we had. IGCWD said, do you think Kyle Ford should move to his position from wide receiver to tight end after his performance today?
Hey, not to toot our own horn a little bit, but
But you're going
did
to
we
do
not
it.
call that? I mean, hey,
You
I'll
called
toot my
it.
own
You're
horn a
too
little bit. I
humble. You
called that.
called it.
I did. You know what? And I love too some of this stuff, and I'm not trying to be like cocky Cody or I know football Cody and all that, but there's other stuff that we talked about that we see. Well, it's just cool, I guess, when you spend your entire life playing a sport and then you talk about it. And again, I've never sat down and had a meeting with Coach Riley and his staff or what he calls plays on Saturday, but to talk about stuff on the podcast that I spent all these hours, on film watching, and then to see it
Yeah.
happen on Saturday, it's pretty cool.
Motion.
So
There was a lot of motion too.
a lot of preset. What else happened? Miller Moss pulling the football and running. And one of those
Yep.
was a fourth down to score a touchdown. Another, and I talked about that. I even brought up maybe bringing in a Jaden package. Now, that didn't happen, but I said if we don't bring in a Jaden package, Miller Moss, I'm challenging you to pull the football like Jalen Miller did against Alabama. Now, I'm not expecting Miller to turn on a 4.4 speed and hit the corner, but to keep them honest because they crash on the end. And I guarantee you there were meetings between Miller and Lincoln talking about, hey, I need you to pull some this week, 7. I need you to take some on your own. They're going to crash. I know it's not your MO. I know you're a pocket passer. You beat the team with your arm, but I need you to pull some in some of these third and short situations. 3rd and 1, had a great pull to pick up a first down, keep the momentum going, and just you see him pop up and get happy. We thought it was a late hit. They ended up calling it off, but it was close. But just those moments that we talk about and watch all the film and spend all these hours on to see them happen are really cool. And that brings me back to the original question of saying Kyle Ford at tight end, or maybe Deuce Robinson at tight end, which they did. Lincoln Riley went 4 wide, or in this game, were they calling it 3 wide and treating Deuce Robinson or Kyle Ford as that tight end option, right? So it's only 3 receivers, a tight end, and a running back, but you have either 81 or 2 at that spot. So, and again, they're not at the end of the line of scrimmage with their hand in the dirt, in a 3-point stance run blocking. That's why we brought in Cade Eldridge and we brought in Walker Lyons to be more efficient in the run game. But we forced Wisconsin to spread out a little bit and allowed Kyle Ford and Deuce Robinson to play some tight end. But yeah, I'd love to see Kyle keep playing some tight. He's just another big pass catching, dominant, physical player that can be on the field while Lake McCree is out, that can be an asset for us in the passing game. So that's a great recognition by them. And I'd love for that to be something that we use a lot more going forward.
Troy said, is there anything else USC's offense can do to get Zachariah Branch involved?
Yeah, this one's tough. I've been kind of back and forth on Zachariah right now. Like, he has flashes and has some big time plays where you're like, yeah, that he's the real deal, which he is. He absolutely is. But there are times too where it feels like he maybe drops a pass that we're not used to seeing, or he gets put in a situation to where it's a tough catch for him that I think maybe we can get him the ball a little bit or in a different way, across the middle, or maybe that's Coach Riley still trying to get some confidence, figuring out, hey, let's push the ball downfield to Zachariah and see if he can go up and make those plays. But for me, and I've said that before, let him run a go route, let him go down and get the football. But if it's not working, we have 2 guys or 3 guys really right now too that are legit deep threats. How awesome is it to watch Deuce Robinson and Jacoby Lane go up and catch a 50-50 throw? Kyron Hudson is phenomenal right now in catching those back shoulders and the body control that he has.
Yeah.
Zachariah, the more you watch him, the more you study him, his MO, his specialty is just getting him the ball in space, right? That's where he really excels. He had 2 big plays, I think, in the first half against Wisconsin. The first one was that 3rd down crossing route, right? Little 4-yard pass he took for 15 or 20. Then another one was an over route, right? Over the middle of the field. Let him run sideline to sideline and force a defender in man-to-man to keep up, get him the ball in space, and then he picks up 20 or 30, right? So that's so much fun to watch. I don't know if pushing the ball down the field to him, especially against some of these bigger corners, is where he's going to excel. My favorite play for Zachariah is those little slide routes, those little crossing routes. Let him run one-on-one. Let him run away. The play against Michigan where Miller made the guy miss, hit Zachariah on the crosser or the corner, and those are explosive plays. That's where he excels, working lateral or sideline to sideline. I almost said laterally. This is a little inside joke.
Are you revealing
I can't
this?
say that word when I'm rolling. I'm rolling. Yeah, we're
Okay.
rolling. I'm letting everybody in. It's getting late. I'm going to keep rolling. But I struggle to say laterally, so I say sideline to sideline. But anyways, that's where Zachariah.
If you're going to say this, I need to tell people. You did, but you said it 3 times in our preview podcast, and each time we had to cut so you could say sideline to sideline.
I couldn't.
It's hard to say.
I don't have trouble with my R's, but I kept messing up laterally.
It's hard.
Laterally.
Sorry, continue.
It's a tough word. Anyways, but yeah, so I think Zachariah Branch excels laterally in our pass game. But also, a thing for me too was Zachariah, now that we're on that topic. And it's a good question because he's an important player on this football team. I might be the only one in this, and I haven't seen a whole lot of people talking about it, but I feel like he's lost some confidence in the return game lately, and that's something for me where I think he excels. I know Lincoln Riley challenged him to be better in the return game, to add that, extra layer of attack that we can have. I know it's not offense, special teams is its own category, but it helps our offense out when he has those dominant returns, or he can take one back and put 6 on the board that we saw his freshman year. It just feels like this year, I don't know if it's something he's been told or if it's in his head, or he's worried about making a mistake, and we saw him make that mistake on the fumble that we didn't see him make it all last year. That's a play right there where I feel like he's like, all right, it's going out of bounds. Let me get away from it, or I'll run up and catch it. He was indecisive, and I just feel like he doesn't have that confidence he had a year ago as a returner that I know is still there, and I know he's still capable of, because he's one of the most exciting players on the field, no matter who we're playing on both sides of the football, right? On either team, he's one of the best players on the field every game that we play. But it just feels like for me right now in the return game specifically, he's lost a little bit of that confidence or that spark or that excitement that you used to feel when number one was on the field getting ready to catch a punt or catch a kickoff return. And I want to see him get back to that. And maybe trying to push the ball down the field like we did against Wisconsin is helping Lincoln maybe get some confidence back for him. But in the return game, it just feels like he's lacking a little bit of that confidence that we've seen from his freshman year.
Yeah, to your point, after he fumbled there, you saw him get targeted right after that to kind of get him going again. But I feel like
that's a great catch. Yeah.
On the whole, I've seen it before where in the return game on punt, it just feels like you can almost get the yips when it comes to making a decision. You know what I mean?
And it's not even, that's a great point.
And I don't know how you fix that, because it feels impossible from my perspective.
Well, I'm glad you said that too, because and like I said, I've watched it and I was like, I can't be the only one that sees. And I wrote that note in the Michigan game. I forgot to bring it up on that podcast that we talked about last week too, the post game podcast after the Michigan game. It just felt like even on punt return or kick return, like you said, he's indecisive between, should I take this out? Should I let it drop? Should I not take it out? I had one of them, he had like 15 yards of space and still called a fair catch. And I'm like, well, he's the type of player to where even if it's 5 yards of space and you're like, why is he not fair catching that? I'm like, hey, let him do his thing. Don't fair catch it. Maybe make a play. Make one guy miss, because I know how explosive he is. It feels like he's just been more, maybe let's not say confidence. It feels like he's been more cautious in the return game, when I feel like his specialty is being that kind of daredevil, exciting, electrifying player that where he gets it, you're holding your breath to where like, oh no, go down. And then next thing you know, he cuts across back the field and you think it's a 10-yard loss. And now he has a 40-yard gain, right? And he has that aspect to him that's very rare at any level of football. I just feel like he's being a lot more cautious. And if it's a confidence thing, maybe it is, and he just got to get it back. But overall, I want to see that Zachariah from a year ago. And we see flashes of it, right? He's still making big-time plays. He's a very good player on the football team. He's been great in the past game. He was our leading receiver against Michigan. He had over 40 yards, I think, receiving this game, or a couple big-time plays in the first half, for our offense. So I'm not saying that he's not playing well. It's just like I want to see that next step for your sophomore year. And it feels like he's kind of just sitting in that middle ground of, should I be more efficient in the return game, or should I just play cautious and not make a mistake? So I'd just like to see him, get back to that Zachariah that we're used to seeing, especially in special teams.
I feel like it's such a double-edged sword when you're so naturally gifted, because when we would watch him last season, it almost felt like innate. Like, I remember asking him, like, what does your vision look like when you're returning? Because I don't understand how you're able to just know where to go. And he kind of alluded to the fact that it's a little bit innate. And he had a comment after the LSU game where he was talking about the return he had that looked like he was about to take it to the house. And he said something to the effect of, I thought too much and I thought this guy was going that way and I just need to stop overthinking. And I feel like that, yeah. And for the audio listeners, Cody just pointed to his head. I feel like it's one of those things where,
I forget that. Yeah, people can't see
when it's innate, and then you start to be like, I'm thinking too much. Okay, but I'm not. It feels like something that's kind of impossible to coach or get out of your head, because how do you just let yourself be yourself? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and that's exactly what we talked about on our last episode, right? You asked me the question of how do you turn the page, but also still focus on the things that need to be fixed. Where's that happy medium? Well, when you start focusing too much on the negatives and you put too much focus on, instead of thinking in the game that I'm going to go out and be dominant, or I'm going to go out there and throw 5 touchdowns, the opposite of that is I'm going to go out there and I hope I throw touchdowns, or I'm going to go out there and I hope I don't throw a pick, right? The mental side of sports is so powerful. It's unbelievable. It really is. Like people say visualizing it, or visualize it, or see yourself doing it. I was never buying into that, throughout high school, maybe a little bit in college, until I fully started trying it and really started visualizing myself and walk through. You do a walkthrough in a hotel room on the night before a game, right? When you have a tennis ball or a fake ball walk through, you do a clap session, we call it, where it's, green, green, said, and everyone clap and then show
Mm-hmm.
what they're supposed to do. I would really take that next step of actually visualizing the best of my ability that I'm on the field making this play and seeing the defense out there, because your defense in those scenarios are quality control coaches or assistant coaches wearing fake jerseys and all that. But it's so important to see yourself being successful, because if you start seeing the opposite or thinking the opposite of, like you said, I hope I make the right cut here. I hope I make the right decision on this punt return. I hope I don't muff this punt. I
Yeah.
hope I don't fair catch it when I should have taken it, or I take it, get hit, and fumble instead of fair catching it. That can linger and it starts to become the norm, right? And then it starts to become your entire mindset, and you forget how you used to be so free and think and
Yeah.
be positive and just be natural, because you're so confined in your mind. And again, I'm pointing to my head, but you're between the ears instead of just being free on the football field and playing what you do best or doing what you do best. And for Zachariah, that's being an athlete. That's being a playmaker, right? And I'm not saying, again, we haven't spoken to him personally. And Keely brought up the point about the punt return. That's great insight on that, because that makes sense. For those who don't remember, he had just the kicker to beat against LSU, and it really felt like he had the entire left side of the field wide open, and he cut right back into the kicker. And we're not used to seeing that, right?
Yeah.
But for him to say that of, I just was thinking too much. That's a great insight to how he's feeling. And I think that's lingering a little bit for him right now. And again, I don't want to bash on him too
Speak
much.
for
And this
him.
is
Yeah.
nothing critical. I'm not being, and I don't want to talk for him, but it's just, I'm speaking from experience now that we've seen him for a year and what he can do and how exciting he can be and how free he can play. I just love to see him get back to that. And I know he will. I have no doubt in my mind. Just sometimes through your career, you're going to have some ups and downs, and he just may be in a little bit of slump right now when it comes to the return game. And he's just going to take one big play to reset all that and get that spark back.
We got a question from Sir William, who said, "Can you break down how difficult it is for Jacoby Lane to make that catch at 3rd down and 15? Unbelievable stuff."
Oof. Yeah, that was. Now, I talked earlier about how great that first touchdown was, how he kept his foot in. That one was even better. I mean, and here, let me go to my notes. I got my Jacoby notes when I watch him play. And I love going back to my notes because this is how I feel in the moment
Mm.
when I watch it. And then I try to obviously reiterate that to everybody when we do the podcast. But the biggest thing for me when watching Jacoby is that he has the skill set that you can't coach, right? He has the ability with the size that he has. I should say that first. The size that he has, and Deuce Robinson's right there. He's a close second. I think Jacoby right now is kind of taking that next step, and Deuce is right there getting ready to excel, and he really has the last 2 games. But both of them have the potential to be so good. But that catch in particular for me, two plays in that game, I guess 3. The first touchdown, that catch on 3rd and 15 when it felt like we had to have that drive. That was a big moment in the football game. Perfect ball placement by Miller Moss. But to have that type of awareness and ball skills to make that catch and to have that type of body control
Yeah.
to go into that, because it may seem like, all right, he just caught the ball falling out of bounds, but there's so many other aspects that go into that that are so important. The fact that he could make that on the fly on a 3rd and 15 crucial situation tells me all I need to know about his confidence and his playmaking ability. Now, the third play, and I think the most important play of this football game for Jacoby Lane, to where I wrote down on my notes, he is a dog. He is that dude. He is that guy. He has the potential to be the next great USC wide receiver, is when he caught that throw over the middle, took probably one of the biggest hits we saw in the entire game. His helmet pops off. He face plants into the grass, and you can tell, and I get the chills talking about it because I've been in that moment where he lays down for half a second and he goes, "That bleep, that hurt." That
Yeah. Yeah.
thing hurt right there, and that's probably not what he said inside his mind, but that hurt, and I don't want to get up and I want to sit here for a second and maybe take a play off. But you could see that second on the TV copy when that moment kicked in, to like, I got everyone looking at me, my team's looking at me, the guys around me are looking at me. He pops up and he runs off and he's screaming at the student section right there, going crazy,
Well,
lip bleeding and all that.
first of all, he
Was
did the first down
unbelievable.
point. He stood
Oh
up
yeah,
with
then
the
he
ball
does
in his
he does
hand.
the
Yeah.
little yeah. But the thing for me is when that moment right there, right? The playmaking abilities off the charts. Like I said, ball skills, phenomenal. Can make any catch you need him to make. Awareness, right? Situational awareness. Know where he's at on the field. Great football insight that you can't teach. And then body control at that size. Unbelievable. Catch radius through the roof. Reminds me a little bit Dwayne Jarrett in that category. Maybe it's because it's number 8. I don't know. But someone that I like to compare him to. And again, I said at the beginning of the year, not to toot my own horn, that he was going to be that breakout player for USC on offense that was a little bit under the radar a year ago. But for him to pop up in that moment, show all the physical stuff, check. But that right there to show the mental side of it was unbelievable for me. And again, you see him lay on the floor, and you can see it. Go back and watch the TV copy. He lays down. He's face down on the Coliseum turf, And you can see him thinking, I'm going to lay here for a second because that hurt. But instead, he pops up and he realized, hey, everyone's looking at me. And there's like a light bulb that goes off where he hops up and he goes, gets the crowd hyped up, does the first down signal. And yeah, that
The
was so
whole
cool to see. And I
stadium
was
just
so pumped
erupted
to
too.
have. Oh, but that's the stuff that buys in. That's why I say he has a potential to be that type of playmaker. I flash back when I watched that to watching Marquise Lee make a big time play, get the crowd hyped up, to watching Nelson
Yeah.
Aguilar go for 250 plus on a Thursday night and get the crowd hyped up and make those big time plays, to watching more recently Amon-Ra St. Brown at SC Amon-Ra St. Brown or Drake London,
Yeah.
another guy having
Yeah.
those big time plays. So you start getting those flashes. Now he's got a ways to go, and I'm going to challenge him to keep getting better, and he's not there yet. He's got to earn it. But after watching that game, I really feel like Jacoby Lane has an opportunity to really be that next great USC wide receiver. And Deuce Robinson, as he continues to get confidence, isn't too far behind him.
While we're on the topic of wide receivers, Sacramento Pete said, where do you see the youth/inexperience showing up in the wide receiver group? Is it appearing in the slower starts?
I mean, I guess it kind of works hand in hand. And I wrote in my notes too, we still have been having some drop issues that are lingering, right? Even if you go back to the Utah State game, right? Dropped a couple touchdowns there that were walk-ins. Then we had a couple drops in the Michigan game, especially early on. And it's not just the younger guys, but I think they go hand in hand together. Sometimes it's a little bit of the vets, but sometimes these younger guys have some plays that they can make that they're just not quite getting it, and they're having some of those drops. And that's going to come with experience. But outside of that, I mean, it really feels like these younger group of wide receivers, and obviously Mekhi Lemon didn't play last week, but they're really starting to build some momentum and gain some confidence that you hope to see when you get maybe to your junior or your senior year, but they're starting to do it as freshmen and sophomore, which is great, right? Especially that sophomore four, and like I said, Mekhi was out, and Zachariah had a couple drops against Michigan last week and made up for it this week, played well, but overall, outside of the drops, it's tough to find a flaw in their game without getting inside the mind of or getting inside the walls of their meeting rooms to know if maybe a guy missed a block or missed a route or ran the route at the wrong depth. Those are little things that can happen when it comes to inexperience. But overall, it's tough to watch the tape and really point out things that I'd like to see more of from that group outside of the drops, right? We have to get that fixed. Got to help your quarterback out. Can't have those drops, especially those easy layup, first down conversions or those easy, short yardage plays that get you in a better momentum. Can't have those. And then the touchdown drops absolutely cannot happen. But outside of that, Pete, I mean, it's tough to really put your finger on where that inexperience is showing. It looks like a veteran group of guys, especially when they play like they did. I just, we talk so much about Jacoby, but the Deuce Robinson 30-yard catch, that big time third down conversion that he had, on that back shoulder high throw from Miller Moss, phenomenal. Then a couple plays later, to know that it's cover zero, to cut your route off a little bit inside and run that slant route from Deuce Robinson, to know Miller Moss has to get this out quick, and he gets himself open and shows himself and presents himself for a great thrown football. You couldn't have put it in a better spot, but for him to make that play in that type of moment, that is huge to see. That's high level stuff. That is a veteran type play. So it's been phenomenal. And again, there's going to be some things throughout the rest of the year that you will see from an inexperienced group, maybe running the wrong route or doing things wrong. Now it's tough to tell from the outside looking in, but outside of the drops right now from that group and stuff that they'll get fixed, they're playing like a bunch of veterans, and it's great to see them get that confidence going and move in the right direction.
We have a couple more questions for the offense, but I'm going to keep them for our actual question section. But I want to talk about what LA Sports Follower said. He said, with 7 minutes left in the fourth, they go 3 and out. The play calls weren't competitive. What went wrong, he says.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. This was kind of the final point I had before we moved on to defense. And I think it's important because this is something that happened a week ago. And for those you don't know, or if you don't remember from the game, with 7 minutes left, I think we were up 31-21, and we had an opportunity to really kind of that drive to be the dagger, to be the game-ending drive, to put this game away. And we had an opportunity to take 5, 6, 7 minutes, even finish the game with the ball in our hands on that type of drive, and we go 3 and out, right? And it didn't look great, right? And then you go back to Michigan, we had that opportunity in that game. We're up 4 with I think 5 minutes left to go. Great field position, and we go 3 and out. So that's frustrating for me because from a player standpoint or from an offensive-minded player, and obviously your head coach and Lincoln Riley, who's an offensive-minded coach, you have to be able to have that killer instinct in those moments, to where as an offense, you have to love those opportunities. We can end this football game right now with the ball in our hands, right? Wisconsin or Michigan doesn't have to touch the football again. If we put together a 10-play drive or an 8-play drive that goes for 5 minutes or 6 minutes, or they get the ball back now, down 17 with 1 minute left to go and they're just going to run the clock out, right? So you have those opportunities to put the game away, to have, like I just said, that killer instinct. You have to take advantage of them. Now, the other side of that, and why I think we were a little conservative on that drive. If you remember, the previous series, Miller went down after that touchdown, right? And he hit his head pretty hard on the ground after he put his body on the line and scored and pulled it and ran in on that fourth down conversion. They had Jaden on the TV copy, at least from watching, because I left before that final drive. We got out of there to beat traffic. Little side note, so my brother could drive back to Bakersfield. But on that TV copy, when I watched it back, you see Jaden Maeva come over with his helmet on, right? And everyone starts patting him on the shoulders. And I think you texted me saying Miller's being evaluated right now.
Yeah, just to back you up, it fully looked like Jaden was coming in. I was fully expecting him, and so much so that Miller ran out of the tent right before they came out of commercial, I believe.
Okay, so and I'm sure, and they said Jaden was warming up, and again, obviously you can't see because on the TV copy,
He,
and like
he
I
was
mentioned,
taking
I had
snaps
left.
from Jonah on the sideline.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so when you have
Yeah.
a backup taking snaps with the center, I guarantee you 2 minutes ago he told, hey, get some snaps with Jonah, you're going in.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing you do.
That's what it looked
Take
like.
snaps with the starting center, then you go in. So Jaden Maeva is getting ready to go in. Lincoln Riley's probably in his playbook going, okay, what's my Jaden package look like? What are we going to run for Jaden? Fresh off the bench, probably cold, not warmed up, big time moment in this football game. What are we going to run? And then you have an idea of where you're going with that. And then all of a sudden, boom, Miller comes off the sideline. Love the toughness. Love that he got cleared. He was healthy. He was fine and wants to go back in. But now you've got to switch or transition as a play caller to go right into, all right, Miller's going in. Let's go. But also, how healthy is he right now? Is he actually good? Is he okay? You know, is he going to go out there and feel comfortable? Is he exhausted? Is he taking too many hits? So there's a million things going through your mind as a play caller, as an offense, as the guys around him, because everyone's patting Jaden on the head, and you see the Mason Murphy give him a pat on the back saying, hey, you got this. Let's go. Let's roll. Brad Nessler on the TV copy saying, hey, here comes Jaden Maeva, giving a breakdown of where he's from, his background. So everyone's believing that. And then you have Miller Moss, kind of heroically running out of the tent and grabbing his helmet and saying he's good. And you can even see Miller and Lincoln kind of saying the last couple of words before they get put out there. But then the play clock starts and he has to take off. Right. And it seems like Lincoln's trying to tell him one last thing, but then they're going. So then he switches to the radio. And before you know it, they run a play. And then it's a fake, handoff slide route to Quentin Joyner. They look kind of out of sorts. And then you see Miller do this, Quentin, look back at me. So it's tough because I say all that to say the operation looked off in that moment. And in those important drives, that can't happen, right? You've got to be able to have that killer instinct. But you also don't want to just put your backup in if your starter is still ready to go, right? So it's a tough part. But then the next play, we get behind the chains, right? And then we're struggling. Then we don't get anything going. Then we have to burn one. So it's tough because we didn't really do anything. And it was a quick 3 and out on that series. But those are opportunities. And this week, luckily, it didn't hurt us, right? Our defense came out, got a pick six, put the game away from our defense, which was awesome to see. And I can't wait to talk about them in a second. But as an offense and as a quarterback, you take it personal, especially when you failed a week ago. And I guarantee you it's going to come up again. We're going to be in some close games the rest of this year when we call it the 4-minute drill, right? You have your 2-minute drill where you're trying to score. The 4-minute drill is when it's around 4 minutes, right around that, or 7, or, the time can be whatever, but you call it the 4-minute drill to where you put the ball away. You tuck the ball away a little bit tighter. You put the game away. You make sure you don't have a turnover. You slow down a little bit. You can still be aggressive, but you slow down a little bit, and you're trying to put together a long drive so that their opposing offense doesn't touch the ball again and the game's over, right? And you feel great about yourself. So I'm glad that got brought up. That's something that absolutely we need to be better at. We need to have that killer instinct to go out and say, hey, we're going to finish this football game with the ball in our hands. We're going to put it away. We're going to string together a drive that keeps our offense off the field. But that's 2 weeks in a row that we've struggled with it. And I know there were some aspects, like I said, this week, but again, going forward, we're going to be in that situation again. And that's something at practice that we've got to work on so that we can be better in those scenarios.
Alrighty. Any other thoughts, Cody, on the offense before we switch over to defense?
No, the last thing I had that I just wanted to get out there, and I have to give credit to our team because it is NFL-esque. It's Aaron Rodgers-esque. How good have we become at the free play on third down, getting a defense to jump, even on the road? We were doing it against Michigan, at home too, doing the clap. And it may seem like a small thing, but I wrote that in my notes to make sure I talk about it because you have to be so locked in to be able to do that and be so disciplined to not jump off sides. And especially when the defense gets a head start, you're thinking, okay, I got to get out of my stance and cover or block or get back or whatever it may be. But to know that, hey, if they jump, don't move. They'll try to get back. We get a free play. We have become so good at that, and that is going to be an absolute weapon on third and fourth down. And it's been so much fun to watch us kind of master that. And I'm serious. It's Miller Moss looks like Aaron Rodgers out there, and the to be that smart as a quarterback, to have situational awareness, to know when I have a free play that I can take a shot, right? And he's thrown a pick before on a free play, and it's okay because I'm taking a shot. And he's like, all right, whatever. I'm gonna put the ball out there and try to make a big play off of this because I know it's coming back regardless. Or when you hit it and it pays off, the touchdown to Jacoby Lane against LSU in that big time moment. So I just got to give him credit on that. I think that's great. Offensive line too. I know we've been hard on them this episode. We've given them some tough times. We give them constructive criticism and challenge them a little bit. And I'm sure, obviously they're doing the same thing, but they have been phenomenal up front of those free plays and the discipline to stay in your stance and force the defensive line to jump. And it's been awesome to see. But no, I'm good. Outside of that, the biggest things for me is love that Miller ran the football. I know he watched our preview episode. Him and Lincoln watched it together, probably on their Thursday meeting. So
Yes,
glad they watched that
they have
breakdown.
so much time to do that, Cody.
So that was great to see. But again, our offensive line has to improve. They're going to get better. I believe in them. I believe in Coach Henson. I believe in Lincoln Riley and the staff. I know they're going to get the job done. And then our young receivers are looking phenomenal. But other than that, let's continue to start fast. And then the biggest thing for me too, eliminate the turnovers. We cannot have 3 first half turnovers and expect the outcome, especially in the first half, that we want to see. But overall, I thought it was a solid performance from the offense, and they looked great throughout the game, but a ton of stuff to learn from. And I know they'll get it fixed this week going into Minnesota.
Alrighty, I want to switch over into the defense, but before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And Trojan fans, celebrate every USC win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any LA area Ralph's store. Alrighty, Cody, when talking about the defense, I actually want to start with a couple of questions based on what you and I actually talked about before we started recording. Michael said, schematically speaking, what changes did USC's defense make in the second half? And Doug said, why is it taking the defense until the second half to adjust? But and correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, but based on our conversations, it didn't seem like USC changed anything scheme-wise from first half to second half, right?
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't do anything different scheme-wise from first half to second half. We really stuck to our game plan. Our execution just changed. And overall, I thought our defense played phenomenal. Right now, if you look at the numbers, the first half was, and I was there in person. I get it. The feeling from the game, watching from home, I'm sure was the same way. And I watched the tape back multiple times. It felt like on defense, we struggled in the first half to be dominant, right? We weren't giving up too many yards. We weren't really struggling to get some stops because we did. And it wasn't like Wisconsin was running and throwing the football all over us. They had some big time plays and they put together a couple drives. But overall, when you go back and watch the film from first half to second half, the biggest thing that changed, like I just said, wasn't scheme, it was execution, right? Because we were aggressive the entire football game. We loaded the box multiple times. Our game plan for this from Danton Lynn was to be aggressive, right? And I love how fearless he is as a play caller. He knows that he trusts his guys on the field, that he can send these cover zero blitz. We can get after a younger quarterback, an inexperienced quarterback, and trust our guys to cover on the outside. But you are going to lose some of those. You're going to give up some big plays. It's a high risk, high reward type of defense. That's going to happen. For example, the first series of the game, right? We give up that huge touchdown pass. That was an all-out cover zero blitz look, right? Now it played into a little bit of a different look if you watch it back. We only end up bringing 6, but that's because we bracket with Bryson Shaw on the back end on the slot receiver, and then Easton Mascarenas Arnold is man-to-man on the running back, but he stays in to protect, so he gets to be a free hole player. But on the outside, Jacoby Covington and Jalen Smith are locked up man-to-man. And it's tough because Jacoby Covington gave up a big play, right? And when you watch it from a surface level, you think, man, you got to get better in coverage there. How are you letting the guy get behind you? Why are we giving up a big play on the first series of the game? Weren't you prepared for that? But it was a cover zero look. And you're taught as a corner that the ball is going to come out quick on cover zero. But Wisconsin really called this play perfectly. They called a double move there, which in cover zero as a corner, you don't expect them to have time to get the ball off because you're bringing an all-out blitz and you think they're going to get home and the quarterback has to get rid of it. But they called a double move there, a hitch and go, which is tough to defend, even if it's not cover zero. But when you're on an island, you've got to make that play, and they got us on that. And that, that's a gotcha moment. You're going to lose some of those, right? You would hope for us to get home and have a sack in the backfield, but then you watch that and think, are we going to get away from the game plan? Are we going to be afraid to be aggressive? Do we have to change that? We didn't. From first half to second half, from a scheme standpoint, we continued to bring pressure. We continued to force this young quarterback to be uncomfortable, to move around in the pocket, to have to get rid of the football. Now, I would have loved to see some more sacks and see us get home, with our pass rush, but we forced him off his spot so much. And again, he was only 50% completion percentage on the day. He had those quick loud feet like we talked about because of the constant pressure we brought. And when he did get rid of the football in those tough situations, we get a big hit from Kamari Ramsey, right? We get a pass breakup. We get a third down stop. We do big time things like that. We get off the field on fourth down. So that's great to see. So that brings me back to the original question. Schematically, we didn't change. Execution wise, was way better, right? Our scheme, our game plan, our scheme for this entire game was to be aggressive, load the box, bring a lot of pressure, go cover zero in those got to have it situations, bring cover zero on first down situations. We didn't get away from that. We just executed and got into a better rhythm in the second half. And just a step further for that. I know we got some more questions and we'll get into it, but while we're on this topic, for context, right? When you watch it back and you look at the numbers and you look at, the stats from those drives and the series they had, it really was not that bad from the defense, even in the first half. I thought it was a dominant performance from start to finish. Now, the second half looks better. Yes, I'm not saying that it didn't. I'm not saying that we didn't play great in the second half and made and executed on those big time plays. We absolutely did, and we gave up some bigger plays in the first half. But a big part of that was the turnovers that we had by the offense. The punt return situation that Zachariah Branch had the muff punt. They get a short field. Defense just got to stop. They're off the field getting ready for the next series and getting some water, getting a rest and recovery. You get a turnover. It's a sudden change moment. Defense, you're back up. Rushing to grab your helmet. You go out there and you give up a one-play touchdown, right? That's tough to do. So that looks bad from a score standpoint, right? But going through this, and I just want to put it into context a little bit before we break down the rest of this defense, how dominant this performance actually was, taking out, some of those big plays that we gave up in the first half. But if you look at it, those three series that they had, the first one was 4 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. That's on us, right? Got a big play, high risk, high reward, hit a touchdown pass. The other one was after the punt or the muff punt. 1 play, 18-yard touchdown. That's on us. Got to make the stop, but we can't put our defense in that situation after they just got off the field. Now, their best drive of the game, where I do give Wisconsin credit, where they exposed us a little bit on that first half, on that drive, was they go 7 plays, 75 yards. That's the second drive or the second to last drive before the end of the half. Outside of that, though, I want you to listen to the rest of the series for Wisconsin from start to finish. This is the first half as well. This is why I say when you watch it back and you put it in perspective, it's never as bad as you think, and it's never as good as you think. You may think the first half, our defense couldn't figure it out, gave up over 200 yards on a couple big plays, right? One big drive, one big play. Outside of that, that was the story of this football game for Wisconsin's offense. But when you put everything into perspective and you watch it back, this was a dominant performance from start to finish. I was very pleased with Danton Lynn's defense. So outside of those three series, they have 4 plays, 13 yards, punt. Then they go 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. Then they go 7 plays, 32 yards, punt. Then it's halftime. Then they come out the second half, 3 plays, -7 yards, punt. Then they go 9 plays, 47 yards, turnover on downs. 3 plays, 3 yards, punt. 4 plays, 16 yards, punt. 2 plays, 2 yards, pick six, Mason Cobb, finish in the end zone. Awesome to see. And then the last drive of the game, after a big kick return in a terrible situation, which would have been easy to give up a touchdown. They're down in our end zone or down in our red zone. We go 4 plays, 6 yards, turnover on downs, gets Wisconsin off the field, get a huge stop on fourth down. Lincoln Riley's fired up. So I say all this to put it in perspective a little bit because you may think, hey, the defense looked bad in the first half. Yeah, we gave up 200 yards. We only gave up 80 yards in the second half. So the numbers tell you that. But when you watch it as a whole and the situations that our offense with the turnovers put our defense into, or the muff punt, or outside of that one drive, that big play that on, high risk, high reward that Jacoby Covington made a great play in that same look later on in the game on a go ball that he's going to get fixed and that he did get fixed. That's great to see. But again, I am so high right now on Danton Lynn and this defense, even on some of their bad looks, even on some of their bad reps, even on some of those big time plays. Eliminate the explosive plays. Yes, we have to do that. But overall, I am just so fired up about this defense and how they played. And again, when you watch the tape back from start to finish, there's guys all over the field flying around, trusting this scheme and playing phenomenal football under Danton Lynn and his coaching staff.
And I think it's worth mentioning that this was a defensive performance without Keely Arnold. He was listed as questionable for the game and did not dress out. And he's been a pretty big leader on this defense for the first 3 games of the season. What did you see from that safety position without him?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Big enough, too, to where he wore the green dot on his helmet. He had the in-helmet communication. Do we know? I'm asking you. We didn't talk about this pre-pod, but we know who wore the helmet? Did anybody ask Lynn?
I knew during the game, but it's completely blanking me right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. No, stay tuned. I mean, we'll find that out if you're listening. If you know too in the comments, please let us know. We'll probably look it up as soon as we get done with this episode. But yeah, when it comes to that position, obviously it's tough to replace a guy like a Keely Arnold. But 2 guys that played well and stepped up on Saturday. The first one was Bryson Shaw, who is a veteran player on this defense, has a ton of experience at the college level, right over 100 tackles in his career, played some high level football, made some big time plays for us over the last couple of years. So it was good to have him out there, and he started the game and did some things well. Another guy who I think is going to be a phenomenal football player, who's so great to see him healthy and back out there flying around, is Zion Branch. And
Yeah.
I'm sure all the Trojan fans that are watching are going to agree with me when you see him play on the field and how fearless and how fast and how well he flies around the field. It gets you excited for the potential and how good he can be on the back end of this defense and continue to improve, especially under Danton Lynn. I mean, I just think back to that third down play to where it looks like he's literally shot out of a cannon in his pursuit. He does a great job. How I know that he's coached well and he understands the game of football, and he's a smart player. He does a great job of going inside out as a safety. As a safety, you want to start from the inside, work out, because you know you have the corner on outside contain. The corner's job is to turn the defender back inside to the safety, to the linebackers. When you work that banana technique, as they call it, inside out, where you bend and you work towards that near hip, and then you go out and take their hip out and make a big hit, like he did perfectly, tells me that he understands the game of football. He understands what they're trying to do from a scheme standpoint. He understands that we've talked about before in Danton Lynn's do your job assignment, that I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do because I trust that Jacoby Covington is going to turn this back inside like he did. So that's awesome. Another big play he made later on in the game, same thing. Great front hip tackle, flew in there, surefire tackler. The low man always wins, and he understands that. He is absolutely fearless. He reminds me a little bit of Kamari Ramsey back there at safety, just coming down and making some of those big hits. So I'm so excited for those guys, obviously getting an opportunity. But Zion Branch, for me, is someone that I'm going to keep an eye on. And we want to get a Keely back as fast as possible. And he's very important in this defense. And he's got to recover. I don't want him to rush back, but get back whenever he's healthy. But in the meantime, with Bryson Shaw and Zion Branch, those guys will continue to improve. And I'm excited about what they can do for this defense.
That branch speed, branch family speed,
Yeah.
if you will, plus putting that in a defense is pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, I got to I'm sure they give each other a hard time too, because they both are very instinctive, quick, fast players. But when
Yeah.
you play defense, and we always joke with the guys, we say you play DB because you couldn't catch, or else you'd play receiver. So I wonder if there's a little trash talking between Zion and Zachariah about why Zachariah's on offense because he can catch and Zion can't. But who knows? Hey, let's see a couple picks from Zion and go out there and make some plays. I'm sure he can be a great ball hawk and be a playmaker for this secondary, for the next couple of weeks to come.
You mentioned Kamari, and I think you were already home for this, but that hit that he made exploded the Coliseum. And what
Yeah.
hit's great? When on the replay, you can hear fans go, boom. You know what I mean?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. It's so fun to watch. I just, that's the thing. That's what you love about football in general, is just like how collectively fired up you get about something like that.
And you know what, too, Keely? The most important part about that and what Kamari does is that he plays within the rules, right? He's
Mhm.
not the type of player that's getting a targeting issue. He's had probably 5 or 6 big time hits already this year, and they are clean. Again, goes back to coaching, goes back to being under Lynn for 2 years, like we saw from Zion Branch, like we've seen from Eric Gentry, Mason Cobb. Those are clean, great form tackles where you're getting your head across, keeping the crown of your helmet up. You're not launching and leading with your helmet. You're protecting yourself and you're protecting the runner, but you are still making a hit where the entire stadium goes, ooh, like, that
Yeah.
sound. It's so important to do it within the rules, because if you're just constantly hurting your team and getting
Yeah.
targeting calls, getting ejected, and you do it over and over for the sake of a big time hit,
Yeah, no.
you can't do anything for me, right?
Yeah.
So that's the most important part to me, is he's making these hits, but he's doing it a legal way. And then also the other one wasn't a huge hit, but it was a great play on the 4th and short. We talked about it earlier. A got to have it situation. Wisconsin's up 21-17. It's a game changing play. We just scored off the muff punt. This is a huge momentum changing play. And who's back there making the play? Kamari Ramsey's in the backfield again, like Zion, shot out of a cannon off the edge. I can't believe no one blocked him. He was unaccounted for, which I'll take that every day of the week. If opposing offenses want to do that, that's
Sure.
a recipe for losing, is not blocking one of the best safeties in college football. But he comes off the edge, makes a tackle behind the line of scrimmage. And if he didn't, Anthony Lucas was right there. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking a lot about the secondary, but specifically the safeties, we have some very good ones, and we're very fortunate, even with a Keely Arnold being out, that we have a guy like Kamari to make up for it. And then also Bryson Shaw and Zion Branch to step in a little bit too and make some plays when needed.
James said, what did you think of the depth at defensive line, and which of the non-starters do you see having the biggest impact?
Yeah, I think the top end of that depth, those guys are doing a great job up front, especially on the interior of the defensive line, and the edge players are playing great. But when we talk about what are those next units looking like, the next rotation guys that you have to get to later on in the season, or when you play these teams to where it gets later in November, and guys are getting tired and you've got to really rely on that second and third group or guys that come in and give some of the starters a breather. Guys that come to mind on the interior of the defensive line are Jade Abasiri is one guy that I think can be a good player in this defense. Elijah Hughes, who has some experience, a young sophomore player, but has shown some flashes at time that I think can be good. And then you look at the outside of the of at the defensive end or the rush edge position. You have Devin Tompkins as a good player, Cameron Fountain, Sam Green, another guy. So, and I talk about, are we worried about depth? And then I just name those guys, and I'm kind of answering my own question in my head too about how many good players we have in the waiting that can come out and make an impact, right? And it was great to see Solomon Tuliaupupu the other day, got some more reps again, and
Yeah.
he's been playing. He played a little bit against Michigan. So we do have some good rotation guys after our first, 1A, 1B players that have been rotating. But overall, how that's going to play out and who's going to get more playing time is going to come down to how you perform when you get those opportunities. But we have about 5 or 6 guys at both the interior and the outside that I think can be playmakers on this defense, and they continue to develop like they have been under Danton Lynn, can be some big time playmakers for us later on this season.
What did you see from the starters, though, as far as the defensive line goes?
Yeah, I think, and I've got to give credit to these guys. I'm glad you asked me that because it's we have been playing so physical up front from last week against Michigan to this week, and they're listen. We'll get into it in a second. I do have some criticism to talk about. A little bit in the run game. This defense overall as a unit, some things that we can improve on, but. And I know the offense, I was very critical, and it sounds like on defense, it's just all praise. That's not the case. We'll get to the things that we have to get fixed in a minute, and there's absolutely are some issues. But on the positive side of things, right, I love the way that this defensive line is playing. I love what I am seeing from the interior of this defensive line. Gavin Meyer is playing high level football right now. Nate Clifton has become an every down player on the inside of this defense. He can move around from left to right on the interior of the defensive line. He can put him on a shade. You can put him in a 3-tech. You can put him head up, playing great football. And then another guy is Kobe Pepe, who has become an absolute unit in the middle of this defense, right? He had a phenomenal play, I think, back to against Wisconsin where he took on a double team blocker. The center was trying to work up to the next level. Physical shift or shed of the offensive lineman makes a play for a tackle for loss. Just was phenomenal to see. And on the outside, we have some very underrated pass rushers, right? Again, Anthony Lucas continues to develop. He's been very physical. Like to see him a little bit better in pass or in pass rush, get home a little bit more. He's getting so close, but he's not quite getting there. Jameel Muhammad, another guy who is a veteran, savvy, former quarterback type of player. He knows where to be at all times on the field. He's moving around great. Braylon Shelby continues to improve. So this defensive line for me has really taken that next step under Sean Nua, under Eric Henderson, under Danton Lynn, and they're playing at such a high level right now that there are times that we can be better, right, and giving up some of those big time plays. But if you watch as a whole the last 2 games, especially in the run game on the ground, again, outside of some explosive plays, it has been a physical, dominant. We're not giving up huge gaping holes in the run game consistently, right? We're holding our own. We're beating double team blocks. We're getting in the backfield. We're getting TFLs. So it's been great to see. And that's paired up with a great unit at linebacker as well. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I've got to give a ton of credit to that starting group up front, or those first kind of couple, 1A, 1B rotational players on this defensive line. They're playing very high level football right now. We need them to keep it up, especially as the schedule gets tougher going on this year.
I know you touched on it, and I always want to give credit to the players, but how much of this is the Henny effect of just adding him to the staff?
That what does he say? The dog work or dog mindset? Dog work? Yeah, I love that. Did you hear at the Coliseum they added a song too?
No.
Where it's like it's the dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah.
Dun. It's like a beat, and then they go dog work. I don't know whose voice it is or how they got it, or if it's actually in the song, but it was cracking me up. But it was cool. I mean,
I did not notice
everyone,
that, no.
The Victory Pod, the Coliseum, now the radio or the music inside the Coliseum, they've all embraced that Coach Henderson mindset, which is awesome to see. But that dog work mentality, but it's true because I mean, and that's what they call them, and it's not in a bad way. It's a football term. Those are the big uglies, right? Those are the guys. I want you to be afraid of my defensive line. I want opposing offenses to look on the schedule and go, man, we got SC this week, right, man? Like, shoot, man, we got to play SC this week. Have you seen Kobe Pepe? Have you seen Gavin Meyer play lately? Have you seen the mentality that Nate Clifton's playing with? Have you seen the guys off the edge? You see that 4th down play against Wisconsin? How are we blocking that? This is a red dot player. We've got multiple of them on the defensive line. We really are getting to that. Did you see the rotation guys they have behind that? Oh, yeah, and by the way, their head coach or their position coach is Eric Henderson, who has Aaron Donald coming to practice and talking to these guys, so it absolutely is a huge effect on them. I think Sean Nua is phenomenal too. I'm so happy that we kept him around. He is the definition of a player's coach as well. But to have those
Yeah.
two paired together with New and Henderson, you are seeing it pay off already so early this season. And the sky's the limit for this defensive line. Now we have to continue to be consistent. We have to get better. There are times throughout this game where we get moved around too much, and there's times we give up some big plays in the run game because we're getting moved off our spot. That's going to happen. It's okay. You're not going to win every single rep. If we won every single rep, then everybody on the defense will be going first round, right? It's a game of football. They have good players too on opposing offenses, but overall, our consistency right now on defense, and we're winning more than we're losing, has been amazing to see. And I hope we can keep it up. And again, a big attribute to that is Sean Newell and Eric Henderson.
Now, you've mentioned there's places where USC's defense can improve. What did you see as far as Saturday's game?
Yeah, there are some areas to improve on from this football game. And obviously, I've talked about all the highs so far. I think it was important to start there because there was some frustration or a sense of, let down from the defense in the first half. But that's why I wanted to put it in context a little bit of overall, even the first half combined with some of the big time plays we gave up. This was a dominant defensive performance, right? We did a great job. We held them under 300 yards. They only had 4 yards per rush on the ground, right? We kept them at 50% passing through the air. We had 2 turnovers on the day. So overall, I thought it was a dominant performance by this defense, especially on the numbers or by the numbers in the second half. But some of the things that we can be better at and some of the things that may hurt us if we don't get them fixed going throughout the rest of the schedule. One for me is the explosive plays, right? That can't keep happening. We have to stop that. Now, I know it will skew the numbers a little bit, and I use that as an explanation of, hey, they had this amount of yards, or they only had 3 drives that were great because they had a big play here. That still counts, though, right? And we go back to the Michigan game. They only had 133 yards rushing outside of those 3 big plays. Well, you can't count those out. Those still counted. Those led to a loss a week ago. Those led to us being down in the first half in this football game. So my most important thing is eliminating this explosive plays, especially to Danton Lynn's standard, right? For him, 10 yards is an explosive play. I love that, right? That is a great standard to have because normally it's 15 or 20 yards. So I would love to see maybe some of those 70 yards runs, 60-yard runs from a week ago, that 60, 70-yard touchdown pass from this week on the first drive. Cut those down to 10 yards, to 15 yards. Make a play. Eliminate those. I'm fine if we give up a couple 10, 15-yard plays, but giving up those home run touchdowns or those home run hitters in the run game or through the air cannot be an issue going forward. We have to get it fixed, right? So that's first and most important, in my opinion. Eliminate explosive plays. The second area that I think we can be a little bit better at, right? And I just praised our defensive line. They're doing a phenomenal job with Sean Newell and Eric Henderson and those starters up front and some of the rotation guys that are continuing to develop. But there are times, and especially early on in this game, in some of my notes, that we were getting moved off our spot too easily up front. And you go back to the Michigan game, there were times that we were losing to those double team battles or making it too easy for the double team to get to the next level or getting moved out of our gap and losing gap integrity on some of those one-on-one blocks that we can be better at. Look, you're not going to win every time. I understand that. Now, the flip side of it, I truly believe that we have come into this conference as a defensive line, and I'm sure a lot of people probably on the outside looking in didn't expect this, but we've shown that we belong in the Big Ten, that we can be physical, that we can control the trenches on the defensive line and stop the run game on some of these offenses. But can it be better at times? Can we have better gap integrity and do a better job of stonewalling these offensive linemen trying to get to the next level and be a little bit more physical and get some better penetration? Sure. That's an area I think we can improve on, and that hurt us a little bit on Saturday against Wisconsin. And then the last note I have that I think we can get better at, and I've talked about this over the last couple of games, I'd love to see us get some more pressure on the quarterback or get home when we have pressure on the quarterback. We've done a good job of forcing Utah State to get the ball out quick, Garrett Nussmeier to get the ball out quick. Last week, Alex Orji didn't throw the ball a whole lot, but this week, when we go win against Braden Locke, we lit him up with pressure, right? Dan Lynn's plan from the first half and the second half, we're going to be aggressive. We are going to play with no fear. We're going to go after your quarterback and force him to get the ball out quick. And I'm sure he watched the film like we did. He has those loud feet, those quick feet, and we're going to force him to be uncomfortable. Did a great job. I would just like to see us get home a little bit more, right? And we can't control that sometimes if the quarterback's throwing it away or if we force an errant throw. I love that. That's still a win. But I'd love to see Anthony Lucas or Jameel Muhammad get some sacks, get some turnovers, some sack fumbles, like we've struggled a little bit with on offense, right? Think about those momentum changing plays in games when you have a sack fumble, when you have a defense get a turnover off of a fumble and get off the field, right? And then you get all that momentum with your offense coming back. So I would love for us to be on that end of it and force some sacks and get some sack fumbles and get off the field, especially on third down or obvious passing situations. But outside of that, it's tough to critique this defense, right? They've been phenomenal. And there's always areas that you can improve on, and you can find flaws in every defense all over the country if you want to nitpick. But I am so proud and so happy that, Danton Lynn is here as our defense coordinator and what he's been able to do in such a short time in 4 games and the turnaround that we've seen from a year ago or the last couple of years and already see that implemented this quick into a season. It's been phenomenal to watch. And I truly believe the sky's the limit with this defense. We're going to continue to get better. But those are just little things that I'd like to see us improve on a week to week basis.
Alrighty, Cody, any other thoughts about USC's defense before we go into questions?
Yeah, I mean, final 2 points I want to make about this defense, and two more things I'm going to praise them for. I know I've talked so highly about them, but it's well deserved. Third down has been phenomenal, right? Wisconsin was 2 of 10 on third down on Saturday, and this is something we talked about from a week ago against Michigan. Right, we did a great job against them on third down, but this next area that I want to talk about was fourth down. And think back to that Michigan game, right? The 4th and goal to win the football game. A couple fourth and got to have it situations. One led to a big touchdown. Was the play clock out? Was it not? We're not going to get into that, but that was a 4th down play that led to a touchdown, right? So there were times in that football game where we had to improve on got to have it situations again, specifically to win the football game, and we couldn't get the job done. This week, Wisconsin was 0 for 2 on 4th down, especially that last drive of the game when we put ourselves in a bad position on the kick return, but we got off the field on a 4th down stop, a turnover on downs, and then that huge 4th down where Kamari Ramsey came in the backfield with Anthony Lucas, made that big time play that really changed the momentum and the outcome of this football game. So that is a huge thing to see and a great confidence boost to see us struggle in a category a week ago and then make a drastic change the following week. To hold your opponent to 2 of 10, 20% conversion on third down is winning football, but to have them go over a 0% conversion rate on 4th down in key moments in this football game, absolutely phenomenal job by Danton Lynn and his defense. And then the final thing I said before, and I'll say it again, I love how fearless Lynn is as a play caller, right? And we talked about, did they change the scheme from first half to second half? They didn't. They stayed with that same aggressive play style going after this quarterback. The only thing that changed, in my opinion, was execution. Maybe they moved him a little bit and put them in better situations or communicated in a different way. But from a schematic standpoint, they didn't change a whole lot from first half to second half. They just executed better because Danton Lynn said, this is the play call, or this is the game plan going into this week. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to be fearless, but you don't do that unless you trust the guys on the field. Right. And even after a big play given up, he didn't shy away from it. He still trusted Jacoby Covington, who came back and made a great play on a go ball a couple series later in the second half, which was great to see that improvement. But overall, I just love what I'm seeing from this defense. They're going to continue to improve, continue to get better, and the competition is going to keep getting better. And, we're getting into the thick of the Big Ten, but we're at such a great spot right now where we've just gotten through the first 4 games of this season on both sides of the football. We can take that next step and continue to improve.
Alrighty, let's get into the main question portion. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Cody.
Fight on. And I think it's confetti.
There we go. There you go.
Confetti and fight on. Actually, though, before we do go on to the questions, I did have one more note that I wanted to bring up, and it is a little concerning on some, not so exciting news for the defense. We did have 2 injuries in that football game towards the end of the game, too, which makes it even worse. You hate to see that when the game's kind of winding down. But Eric Gentry did go out, and I don't know if you saw anything from the TV copy or what it looked like on the field, but it was a little scary injury. It didn't look like a normal type injury. He went to go make a tackle and he kind of missed the player, or he went down first, so he dove over him and his head kind of tucked under him in an awkward position when he hit the ground, and you could see him kind of grabbing his neck. So obviously everyone's concerned. Then he goes off on the field, and they talked about on the TV copy, and again, I'm not on the sideline, I know you guys are down there, but said he was very emotional and distraught and upset. And then you see him drive off in the cart. He gets carted off the field. So again, sometimes the cart is just a precaution to make sure they don't walk off or to make sure they're okay and they don't, injure themselves worse. But again, something to take note of. And then another player was Mason Cobb, who was on his pick 6, and that was tough to watch. And again, from the TV copy, it looked like it was one of those quarterbacks getting tackled and having the collarbone type injury where they land on their shoulder and it kind of tucks under him. So that was a little scary to see. And he got up after that trying to celebrate. And again, going back to that celebration, that was, I hate to see a 15-yarder, but hey, football's an emotional sport. It's exciting. The hard work pays off. So let's try not to have a 15-yarder, but I'm all for the celebration and doing it with your teammates. So that was great to see. But you could tell they were trying to get Cobb to celebrate and take part in that. And he was just holding his left arm or keeping his shoulder. I think it was his left. Don't quote me on that for sure. But from the TV copy, it looked like it was his left arm kind of holding it down. And then when he came to the sideline, guys were patting him on the head and tapping him after the pick six, and he was kind of holding everybody off not to hit him. So again, I know it's not a huge note, but two things that we need to pay attention to going forward. And I'm
Yeah, no.
sure Coach Riley will update everybody on their status either on Monday on Trojans Live, which we will be a part of, or at practice on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, what's crazy is I totally missed the Eric Gentry part. I was on that side where he gets carted off and I didn't even see that. So I don't know where I was, but definitely missed that. But as far as Mason Cobb, he did come in for media afterwards and he looked fine. Now, looking fine in a t-shirt and then putting pads on is a totally different thing pain-wise. So I don't know, but of course, like you said, we'll probably get updates from Coach Riley either Monday or Tuesday. So something to watch for sure.
Yeah. It's just, and it's just, how good those guys have been playing at the linebacker position and the depth there. That's just something to keep an eye on. But hopefully they're both back this week, and obviously we'll learn more from Coach Riley.
And speaking of the linebacker depth, something that I always talk about this, but like perked my dog ears up, if you will, piqued my curiosity. Cobb also mentioned the fact that Anthony Beavers moved into the linebacker room either this week or recently.
That's right. You told me about that.
And he was named a captain too this week. So I'm very curious that storyline as well. What's going on there? So something to keep an eye out for.
And this was obviously they didn't know they were going to get injured in this football game. This was pre-injury, but the timing of that is obviously convenient now if he is going to play in that linebacker position. But it's interesting too, because with a Keely Arnold out, you would think they would need more safety depth. But you have Christian Pierce, also another guy that can be a playmaker on this defense. So there are guys back there, but maybe they want to use Anthony Beavers in a more kind of lateral, I almost said laterally again, but a lateral type situation, playing sideline to sideline, put some more speed at linebacker if that does happen. But again, if we have Cobb and Gentry have some injury issues this week and they don't want to rush him back, that's a good point to look for Beavers to be out there and maybe playing some linebacker.
Okay, so now for the main question portion, I try my best to sprinkle them in as we're in the discussion portion, but I want to go to a question from Joe Osorio, who said, circling back to my preview question. I love how professional that sounds. Sounds like we're in a meeting. Circling back to my preview question, I thought the short yardage third, fourth, and short plays were well called and well executed. What are your thoughts? Wasn't under center, but still mixed up the looks to confuse Wisconsin. Fight on.
Yeah, fight on, Joe. I love that. And Joe actually tweeted at me. I saw that when I think Miami went under center on a play. And he kind of did the eyes emoji about, hey, this is what I was talking about. So I knew exactly where this question was going. But, yeah, I loved it. I loved the aggressiveness we had on third and fourth and short. That was great to see getting those conversions. Two of those, though, Joe, that I love the most that we talked about in the preview episode was add an extra factor in the run game. And that is Miller Moss, right? He's not going to be a dual threat quarterback. He's not going to take off like Caleb Williams. But when you have him pull a football and pick up a third and short, pull a football in zone read and pick up a 4th and 1 yardage situation, and you go score a touchdown on that and you put your body on the line. Not only is that great for momentum in the football game, but it's so important now because teams are going to watch that and their defensive end can't just crash down now and make the play in the backfield. They have to respect it. Now, are they going to come in there saying, hey, and their scouting report, Miller Moss, dual threat quarterback, he can run the football over the field, he's going to do this, do that? No, but they are going to have to be responsible or pay attention to it at least and hesitate on Saturdays now when we get in those zone reads because he's shown that he can hurt you with his legs. But, yeah, I thought it was great. And then a couple window dressing motions to confuse this defense on some of those third down situations were awesome. Now, will we get under center? TBD. That may happen in the future. I don't know. But, that's not Lincoln Riley's style. But it could happen. Who knows? But overall, if we can add an extra factor in the run game and that being Miller Moss pulling it and picking up a yard or two or going and getting a touchdown, that's going to be huge for us going forward in those scenarios.
James said, at times you'd hear the Wisconsin sideline call out toss accurately before the play. He says, is this something where Coach Lincoln or Miller needs to change up the signals or how they get plays in?
Yeah, I saw that too. That started happening later on in the football game. So there's multiple reasons for that. And I've been a part of teams that have, figured that out, right? And could figure out what was going on. Now, one of it could be thinking Coach Grinch remembers a signal or something from when he was here, right? And there's not a lot of times that you change your signals up, right? You have multiple signals for certain plays, but as a play caller on the sideline, you like to keep your signals pretty consistent. So maybe it was a signal that they saw in Grinch from being at USC and spending so much time with Lincoln Riley and also at Oklahoma, remembered that toss play signal. So he was calling that out. Another thing could be a player tipping it off, right? And for example, if Miller had his left foot behind his right, he was going to pitch it, right? Something as small as that of having his left foot behind his right, or Woody Marks was leaned a little bit this way, or they were in the 1-by-3 with the tight end by himself and then the 3 receivers to the right. And then they knew, okay, in that situation, when that guy does this or the guard or the tackle, gets his foot back or cheats back a little bit. So there's so many little tells that they could have probably picked up was another factor in that. But I go back to me. That was one of the things that I had to work on at USC. And Keely and I have talked about this before, that I had a tell for the snap count, right? And this was self-scout. Luckily, it didn't, carry on the season. It did a little bit, but I got better at it from junior to senior year. But I would, and I'm trying to hold my hands up to show you, but when I would snap the football, when we would actually snap it, I would do a little twitch like this, right? Where I'd pull my hands back. That taught our defensive line in spring ball and in fall camp. That's when he's going to snap the ball, right? We would be on 2 or be on 3. And I would go like this. So I would go, green, said, hut, hut, hut. And then I would do my hands on the third hut, right? Which would tell them wait until his hands move or right before they move. That's when they're going to snap the football. So I'd be on 2. Green, said, hut, hut. And then I would move them with them and they would just key my hands. They wouldn't even listen anymore. It took our defensive staff to come in and tell me that. So that's another way that maybe they were picking it up. And then the third way could be they heard something verbally, right? Maybe we called it out or it was a signal the receivers relayed where they said, hey, grass, or pitch. I doubt they would say something like that, but they may have called it a certain term or a phrase to help them remember, especially when you're at home. You can be more verbal than just signals. So there's multiple things for that. Now, I don't know exactly what it was, but they absolutely had a beat on it and they knew it was coming. But it gets me going a little bit because, again, so many games. So many games within a game. How can you gain an advantage? How can you pick
Yeah.
up little tells here on that? Like there were times when it was, hey, when the center snaps the ball or when he's in pass protection, his hands down. When he's not, his hands up. Or when the right tackle drops his right foot back a foot instead of being forward, it's a run versus a pass, or a guard or a wide receiver looks at like there's so many. That's why you wonder what all the quality control guys do. You wonder what all those guys do that spend hours and hours and hours of film that you don't see on Saturdays or that aren't on the field. Those are little advantages that they can gain. And that's something that obviously Wisconsin picked up against us that I guarantee you this week, Lincoln's going to figure out what that was and they're going to get it fixed going forward.
Was it difficult to change that hand motion that you did?
Oh, yeah. I finally got it figured out, but it was so subtle too that I didn't realize I would do it. Go back. Someone, if you want to, go back and watch some of the highlights. I think you can type it on USC Athletics. Just watch highlights from a game.
What
I think
year
from
was
junior
it?
year, there were
Okay.
times that I think it was my junior year, where I'd be in gun and I would go, green, and I would do like a little elbow set hut when I would snap the ball. I would like kind of move my hands back. I don't know how well you can see that on the thing, but I would do just a little subtle, and then on one, it wasn't that big of an issue because it was pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Green said hut.
Yeah.
But when we were trying to get someone to jump off sides, I would go, green said hut, 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 and then I would actually move on what the cadence
Interesting.
was. But little tells, and that
Yeah.
hurts your tackle. That hurts the defensive ends can get a jump start on the football. They know when they're going because I'm doing that, right? And that's something that I had to learn and pick up. And there's other little things, right? When, as a quarterback, and I'm sure a lot of us do when we self-scout where, hey, when your left foot's back, you're doing a run this way. When your feet are parallel, you're doing a run this way. When you're doing this, it's a drop back, right? So there's little tendencies that we have that you would never pay attention to. But when you have QCs or guys that watch hours and hours and hours of film that are obsessed with gaining an advantage, they will figure out little things that they can do and they can implement into their game plan. And it's something you got to get fixed and figure out. But that's if they know what it was, right? We may never know, and other teams might be able to pick it up until we figure it out.
Rachel said Mason Cobb said that the coaches leave it up to the players to hype each other up rather than the coaches trying to fire the guys up. Do you think it helps with team culture to have the players do the majority of that? What was it like when you played, Cody? And just to give context to that comment, Cobb was asked, was there anything that the coaches said at half that really fired you guys up and got you quote unquote back into shape or anything like that? And he said, no, like when it comes to that type of talk, it's mainly the players that do that to each other. And the coaches are also focused on second half adjustments. So that's what he was saying there, but take it away, Cody.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good combination of both, right? And I know that we have some very vocal coaches. Coach Henderson comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
Sean Nua. I know Matt Ince. It's mainly defensive guys that are very vocal, and you like that. You like to have those fired up coaches, especially on the physical side of the ball, which is defense. So that's great to see. But I'm with Mason on that. It's so important. There's only so much a coach can do, right, to get you inspired to go out there and play, to do the X's and O's, to get you ready to go on Saturdays. A majority of that is how bad do you want it, right? When you're down, when you're in a dogfight like that, when you're struggling a little bit on both sides of the football, when the offense can't get going, it's hurting the defense. When the defense, gives up a couple big plays, now the offense feels like they have to keep up. When it's a back and forth thing, you have to look within yourself to figure out how to get the job done, right? And it's so important to have great leadership and great character on this team. And that's why I love what Lincoln Riley said about what changes were made or what did you learn about your football team. He said, I just know the character that we have on this team. And that tells me that that's true, that at halftime, guys like Mason Cobb, like Jonah Monheim, like Miller Moss, guys that are leaders, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, guys that are leaders on this football team stood up and made it a point of emphasis to say, hey, it's do or die. We've got to figure it out. We're going to go out here and lose 2 in a row. And that's the type of culture that we want at this team, or is that the type of culture that we're going to have on this football team? Is that when we lose one and then we have some adversity that we just lie down, or we don't bounce back up and go out and fight in the second half and figure it out? And that's where that quote comes in from Cobb as well about this team's going to swing until the very end. I guarantee you that was part of the speech at halftime, where that was brought up a little bit of how bad do you want this? How hard are you going to fight? How hard are you going to keep everything alive that you want to happen this season, all your goals that are still attainable? Are you going to get it done and figure it out the second half, or are we going to lie down and be a team that accepts defeat? So it was great to see, and I love the culture of this football team, but a big part of that is the type of players that Lincoln Riley has recruited to USC, the type of players that he's brought in, not only as freshmen or as high school guys, but also in the transfer portal. So it's great to see that paying off and seeing the type of leadership. And that's the thing about, we talked about before about the captains, right? Sorry, I moved my computer. Sorry, about the captains that we've seen about, it's a week to week thing, right? I'm getting fired up over here. I'm hitting stuff. I'm knocking stuff down, but it's people were a little disappointed with the captain role thing being a week to week thing, but it allows people to step up as leaders when you keep it on a weekly basis, when you give guys an opportunity that maybe weren't captains early in the season to step up and become a starter or earn their way as a vocal leader and doing it on the field as well, and being a guy to step up in those halftime moments when the coaches can only say so much. So again, I'm getting fired up. I love it. It's great football. I truly believe we have a great culture in place. And we have a lot of great players on this team that can lead in any given moment.
Mr. Ashcraft said, did Wisconsin throw stuff at us in the first half that we weren't expecting?
I mean, you're always going to have wrinkles from an opposing team that is going to try to find an advantage. But the only thing I could really see from them is I thought they threw the football a lot more than we anticipated, especially early on, right? That go ball the hitch and go for the touchdown, that opening drive, they threw the ball coming out to start the game too on a couple plays and picked up a big third down with the crosser route. So yeah, I think they threw the football a little bit more than we anticipated. And I think that caught us off guard a little bit. But overall, I mean, they held true to their identity, right? They love to run the football. They're going to go spread. They're going to be air raid. They're going to go RPOs, but they love to be a run first team. And they did that, right? And Tawi Walker, the guy that I talked about, was kind of the third guy on the depth chart, ended up stepping up and playing well. Someone that I thought was going to be a good player, right? So that held true. They ended up getting to their 4th running back as well. So
yeah,
they had 4 running backs playing that football game a good amount, right? Played their fair share. But yeah, I think the only thing that they started out doing that maybe we weren't anticipating or weren't ready for, obviously you're always ready for anything, but that we had to adjust to, was I think we were so heavily focused, especially against from the Michigan game a week ago, of stopping the run and being physical in the run game, that they came out passing the football a little bit more. That caught us off guard a little bit.
This is honorable mention time to people who ask questions that we already addressed, mainly second half versus first half questions. I just want to give a shout out, especially because we had a lot of new names asking questions this week, so I just had to give a shout out. Science teacher, Ron from Lower Alabama, Louie, and Shawnee all asked about first half versus second half, but I feel like we covered it pretty well in the discussion portion, Cody. Speaking of shout out, I'm excited about this one. We got a question from Jeremy from France. We have international listeners, Cody. How exciting is that?
There we go.
Right? He said, hey, guys. Yes. He said, hi, guys. Love the show. Could you take a moment to assess this USC team in comparison to the playoff contenders at this stage of the season? So what do playoff contenders look like at this part of the season?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because you look around the country. I think so. The teams that I think are in that category right now, Texas is up there, even with Arch Manning right now, their backup quarterback in there. Like, look at Sark with both those quarterbacks he has right now. Obviously guys that are playing at a high level. When you have your starter go out and your backup looks that well and can carry you into your first SEC opponent and go get a win too, that's awesome to see. I think Alabama is absolutely in that tier right now. Kalen DeBoer is doing a phenomenal job right now.
Yeah,
with Alabama, with the Crimson Tide. So those are the tier 1 players. Georgia, to me, I'm not ready to say that they're a national championship contender, right? I think they're a very good football team. It's Georgia. They're going to be good every year. They've struggled a little bit with quarterback play. They struggled against Kentucky. They could have easily been, had 2 losses already this year. I think they're going to find their rhythm like they always do. So those are teams that that comes to mind, right? But outside of that, your Ohio State's up there. They've looked better too. I've got to give them credit. They're in our conference, so that's great too. We may get a chance to play them this year. That's awesome to see. Penn State, another team that has a dominant defense that, can win you football games if your offense maybe isn't playing great. They're another team in that tier. I think we are closer to that tier than a lot of people think. I think the Michigan game, although it didn't look great, We had so many chances to win that football game. Like I said, we could easily be 4-0 right now, and we're still 11th in the country. We're so close to that top 10. You only need to be top 12, right? You only need to be in those first 12 teams to make it to the playoffs. But so far ahead, I'm getting ahead of myself. I think the biggest thing that we need to do to take it to that next step, to that next year, is consistency, right? We need to be dominant week in and week out. We can't have games to where we start slow, right? We talk so much about the opening of this show, starting slow in the first half, then picking it up in the second half against Michigan, having a very bad or a lackluster first half, and then being absolutely dominant in the second half. If we want to be one of those teams that we see that are consistently around the top 4, top 5, top 6 in the country, you have to put it all together week in and week out. You can have a game or two where you're slow starting, where you're in, and you hear it every year, right? There's never a team that blows everyone out by 40 every week and is the best team in the country. Now, some teams have done that before, right? But there's always those teams that are even the number one team in the country or 1 through 4 that made the playoffs in previous years have those scares or those close games or those games where it's a trap game or a game that you feel like maybe you overlooked, that you play slow and then you pick it up in the second half and you figure out ways to win. But if we want to get to that next level, we have to put out consistent performances like we've seen in the second half against Michigan and the second half against Wisconsin, and make that the norm for this football team, right? And continue to develop players well and recruit well in both the transfer portal and high school. We've got to continue to bring 4 and 5 star players here that want to be here, that want to come in and compete, that want to stay here. And it's so tough to get guys to stay here, but you've got to be able to find ways to build that culture. And Lincoln Riley's doing a great job of that. He's off to a great start. People think, oh, we should already be national championship contenders. I think we have an opportunity to be a playoff contender. Are we a national championship contender yet? Time will tell. I think if we continue to develop and go on the same path we are and get better and better week in and week out, and we can pick it up a little bit with the offensive line, we can get there, right? And we have an opportunity to get there, But at the end of the day, it's only been 2.5 years or 2 years and 4 games under Lincoln Riley, right? He's still implementing his culture, recruiting his type of players, bringing guys in from the transfer portal that fit his scheme. And he's doing such a great job of that. But he's so early in this regime that it's tough to tell where that's going to be or where it should be as of right now as to where it's going to be at. And I think the sky's the limit for Lincoln Riley at USC. So I love that question. That's an overview question. That's a broad question. We don't get those a ton. We're more focused on a week to week basis, but I love talking about that. Do I think we're in tier 1 yet? No, I'll make that clear. I don't think we're absolutely in that, that Alabama, that Texas, that tier of the teams that are top 4, top 3 in the country year in and year out. But I think we're kind of in that second tier to where we have the potential to get to that spot, and we absolutely can. Just what that timetable is going to look like, I think is still a question mark for me.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And what I find fascinating on the whole is that, and Riley said this as well, because like he said, I feel like we played a C plus C minus game against Michigan and we were still in it in the fourth quarter. Like, I don't think we've seen this team fire on all cylinders in a game so far this season. And of course, it's a game of ifs, and this is a big if. But if we see them put it together, like I think this is a scary team. But that if is the question mark. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where it could happen and it couldn't. But either way, like, we'll be here to see it happen and break it all down. But I'm just curious which way it's gonna go.
Yeah. I mean, and the biggest word I think for any team that wants to take it to that next level or be a consistent or a national championship contending team is the word I just said. It's consistency.
Yeah.
Can you consistently, like you said, put it together week in and week out? Can you be firing on every cylinder on offense, on defense, on special teams every single week if you want to be in that national championship contending team? Now that it's a 12-team playoff, I think we have an opportunity to be a playoff team. I truly believe that. I still think we can compete for the Big Ten. I think it's a lot more competitive this year than people thought it was going to be. But we absolutely, especially with no East or no West, have an opportunity to be one of those top 2 teams in the Big Ten. Everything's still in front of us that we want. We have some big time games coming up. But also, like Lincoln Riley said, we played our C plus game. We were still in it. Those are the very good players. And I go back to golf. I go back to baseball. How many times do you hear a pitcher say, I didn't have my best stuff, but I got the job done, right? Or Scotty Scheffler, the best golfer in the world, say, hey, I wasn't hitting it great. I had a lot of misses, and he still wins by 3 or 4 strokes, right? That's when you become a great team, right? But that's what we have to be able to do. Our C plus days still have to produce wins. We have to find ways to win those football games if you want to go to that next tier. But when we really emerge into that national championship contending team, you don't have C plus games anymore, right? Your games are more consistent of your A plus games that you see week in and week out. And this is a team that, catches rhythm or catches fire at the right time, and they're tough to beat, especially at home. And that's got to be another factor. we've got to be a little bit better at the Coliseum. I know it was sold out, but still, it could be louder. I would love to see that. But if we want to be a team that is nationally recognized as a competitor year in and year out, we have to be better in a ton of areas. And again, we have the staff here to do it. We have the players that we're starting to get here and develop to do that. And it takes the entire Trojan family to get to that next level. But sky's the limit. And I feel like we're not far off from getting to that next step.
Well, it's like you almost can see what I'm going to ask you next. Ted said the Coliseum was sold out today. What impact does that have on the team when they're on the field?
Yeah, so this is two parts to this. Love that we sold out the Coliseum. Now, I'm not saying I want this to be a feel good pod, and I want to be positive, and I love the Trojan family, and they've done so much for me, and I can't speak highly enough about all the Trojan fans and alum that have reached out to me when I played at USC or now doing the podcast or being around the program. Amazing, but I'm also a fan as well now that I don't play anymore. It was sold out, but anybody that was at the game, it was not sold out, right? And I think Keely, you can back me up on this a little bit. There are still a lot of empty seats in the Coliseum. And I know sold out means other ticket places buy them, or maybe season ticket holders who couldn't make it to the game, or, people already bought the tickets that had something else come up. Sure. But it was far from packed, max capacity, I guess is the best way to say it, as opposed to sold out. I think those are two different words.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it was a good showing. Like in my 10-ish years, 10 plus a little bit covering USC or being around USC, like day games, like Saturday day games do not generally do well. So I thought it was a good showing for a day game. Now I know you're gonna have your
but that's my that's my pushback.
Okay, fair.
Is I don't but no, but I get what you're saying. I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you.
But
I agree with you.
I have a layer to this comment, but
okay,
it is such a Southern California thing to not show up on time or early. Like the trickle in that happens in the first quarter, it's tough because real moment here. I do a pregame interview with Coach Lincoln, like 20 minutes before the start of the game.
Yeah.
And I had a full question ready to go about sold out crowd, blah, 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 but it was not full at that point. And I'm like, do I ask about this sold out crowd when it clearly does not look sold out right now? Like, I just think the trickle in is sometimes hard to see because, they start the game and then everyone online is like, oh my God, look at the Coliseum, which it is what it is.
No,
but
Keely's, you're being you're going good cop. I'm going to go bad cop this time.
Am I being the good cop? I don't feel like I'm being the good cop right now.
Well, I mean, you're giving people the benefit of the doubt for trickling in late, and it looks a little bit better after kickoff.
That does happen, though.
Yeah, but it still didn't look great, even after the trickle in
really?
from the tailgaters.
Clearly, I wasn't observant
I'll say
on
this.
Saturday.
You were on the field, though, right?
Correct.
You said you watched the entire game on the field.
Yes.
You can't see when you look from the field. I've been there before. Obviously, I play on the field, but when you look from the ground up, it's tough to see empty seats. I sit in the club seats during the game.
Okay.
I can see the rest of the field from up down, from the top down, right? So it doesn't look but it's true. When you're on the Coliseum floor and you look up, it's tough to see, especially when it works up, people behind them or if the seats are full until people stand up, right? But when you watch it from my view, when I was in the club seats, which were at the top, and you can kind of see everything, even at the middle of the first quarter, even at the second quarter, it was not that, right? And that's why I want to challenge Trojan fans to, if we want to be and I know I'm not saying it in a negative way. I know it's Wisconsin. There's not a ton of rivalry behind this game. I know there's not a huge factor of, this is two top 10 teams going up against each other, and it's a huge game. But when you watch around the country and you see these other teams on a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, and I know I'm not going to call places out by name, but I know it's a lot different in X, Y, and Z. And there's not a lot to do in these places than it is in Southern California and Los Angeles and traffic and getting there and all the things that are, outside factors that are out of your control. I get that. But even on third down, when the announcer's like, it's third down and the bell rings and everyone, it's just, we're at like a level 4 right now. And you can even see Wisconsin still verbally communicating at the line of scrimmage, and there's no timeouts called. Now, I'm going back to my experience, and I know it was a night game against Stanford, but I did play in some day games where it was loud, right? Where the UCLA game to win the Pac-12 South my senior year, very loud, sold out. A lot of people at those games, right? But when you have that type of crowd, I can't tell you what that does for a player and how difficult it makes for an opposing team. We are just yet to have that home field advantage. And I know Coach Riley has advocated and pleased or was it pleaded?
Pleaded
with Trojan fans.
That's a tough one. Grammar.
It's getting late, so excuse me on this. Yeah, no one grammar police me, but I know Coach Riley has made that a point of emphasis of wanting to be better in that area because he understands the advantage it gives you as a football team. We have to be able to do that. Now, was it sold out, quote unquote, on Saturday? Yes. was it max capacity and loud and a home field advantage situation? Iffy on that one. I'm not ready to say yes. I'm not going to say no, but it wasn't what you expect from a sold out loud home field advantage type of game for Big Ten conference play.
Alrighty, final question comes from Trojan Mom. She said, what was your favorite play / part of the entire game besides getting to hang out with your little brother?
Yeah, no, that was cool. My little brother Dylan came to the game.
I got to
him
meet
and his
him.
girlfriend. They came down, on the field. You got to meet them. They got to see all of it. It was cool, too, because a lot of old teammates were there. Scott Starr was there. One of my buddies, Gio, that played offensive line for us, was there. There was a lot of former teammates. He talked to Sua. Met Sua. He's known Sua forever. But everyone knew my little brother Dylan when he was every bit of what, 12 years old, 10 years old. He was maybe even younger than that.
Aww.
Now he's 25. So he looks a little different than he did when he was a kid running around when I was there. But yeah, that was awesome. That was so cool. But the best thing for me, I think, from the game, the biggest play, I have two. I have a 1A and a 1B. 1A would be Miller Moss pulling the football and going airborne, getting flipped into the air and scoring that touchdown, putting his body on the line for his teammates. Now, love to see him protect himself a little bit. We got, 8 more games to go and then maybe some postseason as well. So let's be smarter there. But if you're going to score and you're going to put your body on the line, why not? I'm all for it. But probably my favorite play and just the atmosphere of the Coliseum in this moment was Jacoby Lane's helmet getting knocked off and then him getting up and hyping up the crowd. I mean, that was so cool. I just get the chills. I even got the chills watching it. And me and my little brother were standing up, clapping and cheering. But takes that hit, right? And second part of that on Miller, I'm not trying to say anything bad. There were a couple throws that some guys got hit, so I didn't talk about this in the offensive segment of the show. But let's eliminate our guys taking those hits. Let's protect them a little bit. But when you have tough playmakers like that that'll go up and put their body on the line to make those plays, I'm sure they're not complaining, but we can protect them a little bit more as a quarterback, and that's our responsibility. But yeah, that was probably my favorite moment from that game was Jacoby taking that hit, face first on the ground, got dirt on his face. You could tell he wants to lay down, and then that light bulb kind of hit to where everyone's looking at me if I'm going to get up, pops up, does the first down signal, and the crowd goes crazy. So overall, a lot of highs from that football game, a lot of stuff to learn from, but that Jacoby play was probably one of my favorite memories so far this year in the Coliseum.
Alrighty, Cody. On that note, let's wrap this puppy up. Any final thoughts before we say goodnight?
No, we got a preview episode on Wednesday. We're going to get out and hopefully, it'll come out probably Thursday or Friday, but we're going to record on Wednesday. We've got Minnesota week, another away game before Penn State. That's my main point, though. We're not looking ahead to Penn State. I know that's going to be a top 10 game. Everyone's got their eyes set on that game. It's going to be a huge matchup. Sell out and actually max capacity out, I guess, the Coliseum for that game. But this week, we're not going to look ahead. We're focused on Minnesota. They were very close with Michigan, played a similar game that we did a week ago. This is a good football team.
Same
I know the record
too,
doesn't show that. It was what?
Same score?
Yeah, it was 24-27. Yeah, it was a very similar football game too. It could have went either way. And we're getting in a little too deep here, but they actually got that onside kick that they called offsides. I don't know if anybody saw that. Terrible call. Was not offsides on the onside kick, and they recovered it.
You were doing the pregame show while this happened. How do you know that this happened?
I go back and watch a ton of football. I've already watched Minnesota film, so I'm already ready. I'm getting prepared. Like I said, I'm a football nerd. Talking too much. It is now 11:23. We've been filming or recording this for a long time. We have got to get off this.
Talk about
I love
pitcher
you guys.
not having it. That was us today.
My computer's about to die because I didn't think I needed to plug it in because it was at 100%. Now it's literally at like 5%. But we want to make sure we bring you guys good episodes. We want to make sure that we do our due diligence and watch all the film and do all the breakdowns and come up with great questions as well as the great questions you guys ask. We want to make sure we go above and beyond. Hopefully you see that and the commitment that we put into this show and consistently putting episodes out. Keely does a great job editing. She's all behind the scenes. Everything that you guys see is from her. So we put our blood, sweat, and tears into the Victory podcast, and we love getting to bring this product for you guys. Hope you enjoy it. But either way, I'm done. Fight on. I think we'll get some confetti if I do it right. Yeah, there we go. Love you guys. Minnesota this week. Let's keep this rolling and let's improve to 4-1.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for today's recap episode. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.